Okay, we'll be getting started in just a moment here. Hope everybody's doing okay tonight. Just testing things out, making sure the stream's coming through okay. Looks like it is. Test. Test. Looking pretty good. Okay, excellent. So, let's see. We'll be starting the stream in just a second. I'm just looking at some technical issues, but I think I got them sorted. Okay, perfect. So, hello everybody. Hope you're having a good week. Thank you again, as always, for all of the excellent engagement and feedback and commentary on the streams. It's been really, really wonderful. I've really been enjoying my playthrough, and I've also been enjoying our conversations and everything. It's just been great overall. For the first 5 minutes or so, I'm going to go a little bit slower. I'm testing out a new setup here for viewing chat. Hopefully I'll be able to resolve that within the first 5 minutes or so, and then we can kind of get back into the action. Thanks in advance for your patience with that. As for the agenda for tonight, the primary focus is just going to be going through at a leisurely pace and making our way through Earthen Peak up to Mytha. I do want to get into discussing Iron Keep. I'm very, very eager to talk about Iron Keep because that is the level that winds up being referred to very often when people are discussing the game's difficulty and specifically talking about how the game can get overwhelming, and that's the part of the game that tends to get be the breaking point for a lot of people. So I'm eager to get there, but I also want to make sure to do a deep dive on that area and focus on it pretty intensely. So we might start on that tonight if we have time, or we might wait till next stream and poke into the whatchamacallit, the gutter a little bit this evening. We'll see how things go. As a quick recap for our last stream, we made our way through Earthen Peak and through the first area of Earthen Peak and through part of Huntsman's Copse as well, and defeated the Skeleton Lords, and I think we had done the Executioner's Chariot the night before. One thing I want to do once we actually get to Mytha is I want to make sure to crank up the boss music a bit. I've been listening to the soundtrack a lot and realizing that there is really a lot of really interesting storytelling that's going on in the soundtracks. It's not necessarily my favorite of the Soul soundtracks, but nonetheless I think there's a lot we can learn about the world kind of intrinsically by listening to the soundtrack itself, if that makes any sense. It sounds kind of abstract, but I promise that there's that it'll make more sense once I start talking about it. It's always nice to just kind of bask in the atmosphere in Majula as well. One thing that everybody seems to agree on, regardless of how you might individually feel about Dark Souls, if you like it, if you hate it, pretty much everybody agrees that Majula is just such a serene and beautiful place, and that the music really helps drive that feeling home. And it's nice to kind of just take a moment and appreciate that kind of common point of connection, I think, which winds up being what Majula is in the game as well, when you think about it, right? It's just this place where all these exiles and misfits and like lonely souls wind up converging. So it's appropriate that that should be a common, like a point of commonality for folks in the community. It's also nice to just take a moment and look at, like, to survey our domain, so to speak, and take a look at what we have in the background. I think we talked about this on the first stream, but I think despite the fact that Dark Souls overall lacks the interconnectivity of the first game, or Dark Souls 2 does, it still does an excellent job of establishing a world that feels large, lived in, and with an active and sort of tangible history to it. And there's a sense of mystery, I think. There's a sense of wonder that kind of comes from just taking it all in. You're seeing fragments and bits of the history that are scattered and worn for sure, but there's still, hints of the former kingdoms and what they were like in their glory days that we can kind of see. That aqueduct, for example, is in pretty good condition overall. It kind of hints at some sort of industry that had taken place here, juxtaposed, of course, with the ramshackle state that Majula has become. But it makes you wonder about what this place used to be like, what the history was that was sort of packed in here before whatever happened to it did. I'm no expert on color theory or anything like that, but I can say that it is absolutely stunning to me, even as somebody who doesn't know much about visual analysis. My focus is more on audio stuff. Just how lonely and desolate, but also oddly comforting and nostalgic everything here feels. I think we talked about before about how the art designers, lighting designers, directors, whoever was responsible, managed to capture this perfect, like just before the sun sets kind of aesthetic, literally with the sun in the horizon, but also with the music, with the twinkling harps and the slowly fading out strings, and all of the buildings sort of being just on the verge of totally crumbling and falling apart. It all just kind of blends together in a way that, for me anyway, evokes this mood of solemnity, solemnness, and sort of quiet loneliness that I think makes the game so special. And then apart from that, we have this massive looming like Tower of Sauron type thing in the background. It's casting a shadow over everything. Quite literally, it seems like, But that all being said, I think there's a lot of beauty to be found in this game, and it's kind of perplexing to me that the folks who are more critical of the game don't really seem to acknowledge that, or at least don't particularly care for it. I've been trying to keep an ear to the ground, so to speak, on what criticism of this game is, and it tends to focus on, or there's an attempt, I should say, to prioritize objective criteria for evaluating the game. So people will discuss its technical shortcomings, for example, things like the snapping of the of your controls, things like adaptability being clunky, or the healing system being clunky or whatnot, or hitboxes. Hitboxes is something that comes up all the time. And I get that there are, significant issues with a lot of the technical aspects of the game for sure. But I am struggling to understand why there just seems to be a lack of interest in discussing the game's more like, intangible artistic side. If that sounds a little pretentious, I guess, but hopefully you'll know what I mean. And I think the reason is that they want to evaluate the game purely objectively and focus on things that are only objectively quantifiable. And while I understand that from a perspective of journalistic integrity, that may be necessary, that may be indeed very important, or the other way around, it's very important and necessary. When it comes to evaluating art, it's hard to quantify why something makes you feel lonely and nostalgic. You can talk about the mechanics that go into creating the art and the techniques and the brushstrokes and all that, but there is something that's much more difficult to have a conversation about, especially since the feeling of nostalgia varies from person to person, even from culture to culture. But to me, that's one of the more interesting aspects of the game. I love the combat, I love the bosses, I love all of the mechanical aspects of it, and I acknowledged the flaws therein. And also, there's a larger conversation that seems to have been like a line drawn in the sand between folks who are interested in the game as art and story, and those who are interested in the game as a fighting game, for lack of a better term. Both are valid, and I think the game does both well, which is why it's so perplexing to me that there seems to have been this rift in the way that people see it. That being said, I'm just going to test something real quick. Sorry for the double test message in the stream, but I want to make sure this is working. Okay. Well, that does work. Okay. So, that being said, I'm just going to level up real quick, and then we're going to get right back into the Earthen Peak. assuming that I can actually level up. Yes, I got 1. How are we doing on strength and dex and stuff? I think we should probably push vitality a little higher, or vigor a little higher. Now, as I've been talking about all this stuff, I've been curious about 2 things in addition to the stuff we've been talking about together. One is how a sorcery playthrough compares, and the other is how a playthrough of the original game compares. So for context, for folks who are not aware, we're playing the version of the game called Scholar of the First Sin, which came out, I think, about a year after the original, and maybe closer to a year and a half or 2 years. But it was within, you know, a somewhat relative time frame compared to like Shadow of the Erdtree or the Prepare to Die edition for Dark Souls 1. And as a result, this contains all 3 DLCs, but it also contains a bit of a remix of the game, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of item descriptions have been tweaked a little bit, a lot of enemy and item placements have been tweaked as well. And so some people consider this, perhaps even the Bandai Namco would consider this to be the definitive version of the game. But that being said, it's also a game that has its identity shifted ever so slightly from its base form. I think it's vaguely analogous to Master Quest for The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. I could probably just say Ocarina of Time, everybody already knows that. But again, if you're not familiar, Master Quest was a version of the game that came out, I think it was first like made widely available to the public as as something that was bundled together with Wind Waker. And it's essentially the same game, but I think the dungeons are like flipped such that it's the same content overall, but it's mirrored, right? And then there's also a lot of changes to, again, like item placement, puzzle difficulty, stuff like that, that really make the game feel a bit more like a bit of a remix, like a bit of a round 2, I guess, a victory lap for people who have already completed the base game. I don't think I have any bolts, do I? No. So, which is the definitive edition? I'm not sure that there is one that's objectively, definitively correct or anything like that. But it has been very interesting to see if people's critiques of the game hold up over time. Or, not hold up over time, I mean if they apply to both versions of the game. Now, something that's interesting about this level in general is that it kind of riffs on the concept of a poison swamp, or rather a poison level. Some things in this level are designed in a little bit of a clunky way, but that being said, when you start off from the bonfire, something that we didn't talk about last time and something that is staring us in the face right now is that this place is mechanically alive in a way that very few other levels in the Souls game are. Yes, there is some semblance of industry, but I'm struggling to think of other levels that are actively powered on like this. Maybe Raya Lucaria could kind of count because there's magic actively flowing through the whole place. But, or you know what, Elden Ring does have some stuff like this in those forges, especially in the DLC, right? And in the heroes' graves, there's things that are moving. There are pistons that are turning, fires that are actively burning, and stuff like that. So it's not something that's entirely unique. But in Dark Souls 1 and in 3, things were either dead or dying for the most part. So it is kind of cool to see a level that focuses more on, I mean, ironically, it's a level that is focused very, like, obsessively on poison, which of course is associated with decay, but in addition to that, it's also active and alive in a way that we don't really see that frequently in the game, and with mechanisms that, I don't know, to some might feel out of place, but also are still like a natural part of the world. And I think it's important that the game is not only giving you a sight of those mechanisms from afar, but is also inviting you to like participate in it, even in small ways, even in ways that I don't think have a ton of consequence, by engaging with these large vats of poison, so to speak. So you may have noticed in the previous room that I could go up to the wall and I could pull a lever and cause these vats of poison to either raise up to the ceiling, which will get them out of the way and make it easier for me to navigate the level, or I can lower them down and I could potentially use them to defeat enemies by covering them in poison. And the same goes for these pools as well. If I manage to lure characters into the poison, I could potentially turn something that is an environmental hazard on, like turn it on its heel, so to speak, and then use it to my own advantage. But I have to be willing to take that risk. So I'm not going to try to make that jump. I know I'm going to fail really bad at platforming in these games. So I think that, of course, all of this is previewed to us, so to speak, by the fact that earlier in the level we saw those big bulky guys with the hammers walking through those jars, and at the time it might have felt like a bit of a bug, but now we can see that we've learned the principle, like the idea that these things are destructible and that they can hurt enemies as well as they can hurt us. So I think that's a nice little lesson that the game is teaching us. Now, I think it's worth noting that my awareness of the enemy approaching was obviously like partially telegraphed by the arrival of, or the presence of all of those bloodstains on the ground. And I might not have been as successful in sort of avoiding that ambush if I hadn't seen those. This is probably the level so far that I felt the most inclined to, like, that I most needed to start carrying a lot of life gems around to, because the poison damage in this game is really harsh and it acts really quickly. It doesn't burn for as long as in Dark Souls 1, but it does more damage, and enemies build up poison very quickly. So I am starting to feel like my abilities are being tested pretty dramatically, just in terms of my overall health pool, and that I have to be much more careful about the ways in which I'm managing my health, if that makes sense. I feel more inclined to use life gems to kind of keep the what was he doing? Oh, was he healing with an Estus Flask? That's interesting. To keep myself from, you know, totally running out of Estus for when I need it. Now this is interesting. I don't feel like this bonfire was really necessary. I mean, yeah, I don't think I'm a big fan of this, just because, you know, we have taken quite a bit of damage thus far, and I was saying that, and I stand by the fact that this is sort of ratcheting up the challenge level in a way that feels like I need to be more mindful of my healing overall. But that all being said, it's still totally reasonable, I think, for players at this stage of the game to be expected to travel from that bonfire up through here and into the next section. And if it ends up being too overwhelming, I think just from a level design standpoint, it would make sense to like reduce enemy mobs and maybe reduce poison damage or something like that. Because, I don't know, it's not necessarily a mistake. Oh, that was cool. Somebody like closed the gate. It's not necessarily a mistake, but if you're trying to, you know, recreate that Dark Souls 1-esque sense of being on an extended journey where you're facing off against the elements and you're really struggling for survival and trying to eke out that survival as best you can, using resource management and potentially feeling like stranded and overwhelmed and all that stuff, then I think you're going to need to create more space between the bonfires. You're going to have to create more journeys for your players to feel like they're really embarking on for longer extended periods of time. And when you put the bonfires that close, it doesn't really feel that way. So I feel like it would have been better to just adjust things slightly. Now, this bonfire through to the boss feels like correct, so to speak. It feels like properly tuned. I don't have a problem with that. But it's just the previous bonfire that I feel was a little bit much. Interesting. Okay. So this is one of those things where, like, I can understand somebody being maybe miffed about that being an ambush, but I also, you know, it was a long straight hallway, and I didn't really make any attempt to scout it out and see what was coming up ahead. So I feel like, yes, it is maybe a little bit cheap, but also by this point in the game, you know, players should be aware to look out for traps, and they should be, like, we've had plenty of opportunities time and time again to familiarize ourselves with the idea that, like, a long hallway like that will result in a trap. So, I'm gonna pause for just 1 second. Okay, sorry. Yep, everything looks good. Okay, so that being said, let's keep going up here. Let me see, actually. One thing I haven't really been doing is engaging much with the poison healing and abatement mechanics. So poison moss, I think there's an item called common fruit, which boosts poison resistance, which I'm going to save for the boss. But let's see what happens if I take an approach that's more, I can't, oh, something seems up with the enemy health bars as well, which is odd. If I take an approach that's a little bit more, like, less conservative with regards to my poison, I try to avoid it as much. I think there's another bonfire up here, which is just further, yeah, let's see. I use poison moss. It stops it right away. The nice thing about using the poison moss is that it stops the poison buildup before, like, it doesn't have to wait for the entire animation to be through. It just immediately stops it as soon as it, yeah, you see, it stops the poison buildup as soon as it hits your character's mouth, which is nice, as opposed to making you wait for the whole animation to finish. But of course, you know, I feel like poison buildup is so fast that it's almost kind of pointless to use the moss. I mean, you can if you're desperate and you're about to die. See, now I'm about to die. If I don't heal, I'm about to die. Okay, I'm out of health. I better use it now. Okay. But in Dark Souls 1, given the length, like the duration that it lasts, I feel like there was more incentive to use it a little bit earlier. If that makes sense. Now, interesting about this room, interesting thing here, is that you can put a Pharaoh's Lockstone in the mouth, and it will basically generate a pool of water. And I think the water will cure poison, and it will also regenerate your health, which is definitely a useful thing to have, right? But the problem is that we're so close to that bonfire from before. There's also another bonfire that's up here somewhere. I'll go find it in a second. And I don't know, I don't feel particularly inclined to use such a precious resource on something that is not very well needed at this point in the level. I feel like there was a great idea here, which is to make a level that is filled with poison and then give the player the option to invest resources in using these little checkpoints, which would give them extra health and extra sustain, so to speak. But unfortunately, I'm not quite sure why, the placement of bonfires has not entirely invalidated that, but made that, like, the punch of that hit a whole lot less hard. And so I wish this level were maybe like 10% bigger with only one bonfire, maybe two. One right near the boss fight, just so that you don't have to go through the entire thing again. But I think they might have been going, oh, well, actually, I just realized Dark Souls 1 does have a level that's quite like this, that does have, like, active mechanisms and stuff. Sen's Fortress. I completely forgot about Sen's Fortress for some reason. And I think it wouldn't be controversial for me to say that Sen's Fortress, mechanically, just in terms of its traps, in terms of its overall pacing and layout, is probably quote unquote superior to this. There's more interest in the hidden pathways as well. So I do like the fact, though, that they opted for something where poison was percolating throughout the entire place. Poison is not just a passive environmental trap anymore. Poison is an active tool, it's an active commodity, it's an active part of the storytelling. And so the concept for this level, I think, is brilliant. And I think there's a reason why they brought it back in Dark Souls 3 of all levels to bring back. But I think that its vision doesn't quite wasn't quite fulfilled, if that makes sense. I think it was a great idea on paper, but it wasn't executed as well as it could have been. Yeah. So yeah, here we have this is something that kind of comes up when people talk about the game's fairness or whatnot. They say, well, it's really shitty to have to go through a bunch of poison and bleed oriented enemies and then have to fight through these shitty enemies outside of the boss gate, and it's just a pain in the ass and whatnot. And yeah, I can understand that, but then people will counter that by saying, well, there is a bonfire right above them, and I think that's a valid point. Obviously there is, and that changes your tactics. But also, I'm not a huge fan of this bonfire placement, to be honest, and I don't think that most players, especially players who don't play online, will find that on their first playthrough. Oh, I see, it's a mimic. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. They kind of aggregated a bunch of the different player deaths into the single blood pool. I forgot they could do that. Yeah, and so this again, right? I'm just gonna let this play out to demonstrate like the hitbox issues. So on the one hand, kind of lame. I'm not a huge fan of the way that played out, because I totally understand that as a player, work hook, interesting. As a developer, you might want to have an enemy that traps the player and essentially imprisons them if they get hit at all. Like, certainly I don't think that that's an invalid or a bad way of designing a game, of course. But I think the problem there is, again, like we talked about before, is the mismatch between animations and hitboxes. And really, that wall looks suspicious. Maybe I'll try to see if there's something here. Oh, there is, haha. The difference between like animations and hitboxes, there's just sort of a lack of polish on that. I think if they had managed to finish the animation such that the mimic would turn towards your player and it just looked more organic, then it would be fine. The problem is that there's no good reason for why you should be snapped over to the other part of the enemy like that, right? They should kind of like spin or have some sort of a graphic of them pulling you in with like a gravity thing, like out of Elden Ring. Oops, careless of me. So again, another decent idea, nothing inherently wrong with it, but something that was just sort of lacking in its execution, I think. But so I actually really liked this because something about this wall felt very visibly distinct from the surroundings. It felt suspicious in a way that the other invisible walls don't. And given that there were these poison pools here, it seemed like that was adding to the hint, right? Like something about it is trying to push you away, push you off, or something like that. And you can risk it and see if there's a secret behind there, but you're going to have to be prepared to take damage from the poison as well. So it's a risk-reward thing that rewards the player for being inquisitive. And a lot of the other invisible walls or illusory walls or whatever, I don't feel are particularly fair in that same way. Like, I don't know how anybody figured out the illusory wall where you get the first amber herb and sorcerer's staff and all that. That just doesn't really make sense. I think it was one of those things where they had to, it was like a community effort that then wound up getting shared, which is totally fine. Like, that's part of the game's charm. But it's also, when you think about solo players, for example, it's also feels a little bit unfair that they wouldn't have, you know, an equally viable way of just finding it on their own, if that makes sense. See if I can jump across here. These pyromancers obviously do a ton of damage, and sometimes it can feel a bit excessive, a bit unfair, because they're just hitting you so hard. But they do have long cooldowns, and they do have extremely low defense. So arguably, I do think that they are, you know, arguably balanced. You just have to kind of plan around them and be willing to sprint up and really deal with them face to face. Oh shit. What did that do exactly? Huh. Yeah, the variety of traps in this game does feel like it's well, it's nice that they give you a Pharaoh's Lockstone in case you want to go use that pool. The variety of traps in this game does feel like it's been expanded since the previous game. But these enemies are particularly interesting because they're the first enemy except for, like, well, they're one of few characters, I'll say, that have a magic enhanced spear, and they have a very distinct visual look to them. So far they haven't been posing much of a threat, admittedly, but they're still plunging attack. Oh. But they're still genuinely, you know, interesting in terms of their design. The shield as well, if we take a look at that real quick. You know, it's got some interesting glyphs on it, kind of supplemented with the cloth. And then their overall appearance too, there's something a little bit otherworldly about them that I think is very kind of compelling. And when you find out that they're grave wardens, I believe, right? They are guardians of crypts and such. That fits their overall design and narrative very well, I think. That particular ambush, I do think, was a little much, so to speak, right? Like, I think a lot of people would get ambushed there and feel like that was unfair, because maybe just because I was yapping over it, but I didn't hear any I didn't hear any, like, advertisement, so to speak, that the enemy was approaching me. But the attack was quick, and it was over quickly, and it didn't really do all that much damage at all. You can see my health bar is hardly depleted, and the space in which the ambush occurred was safe enough. Like, I could fall off the ledge, I guess, but there's a bit of a railing there. There's a bit of a railing broken and lying down there, which I think suggests that I could break this. Yeah, okay. So that's a nice little bit of environmental instruction, right? We see a broken railing next to the fixed railing. It kind of implies that we could attack it. So, you know, and then we could drop down here and see what happens if we go down that particular path. So yeah, there's a lot of, like, little nudging here. You know, hey, just a reminder, you will get ambushed, so please be careful. Hey, pay attention to the environment, because you could find out some secrets that could open up new pathways. None of it is particularly heavy-handed or obtuse or anything like that. It all just feels very normal. Now, again, I suck at the platforming here, but I'm gonna try, see if I can get across. Oh, I did. Okay. Now this is tense. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I like that moment quite a bit. Crimson water. Soul of the Brave Warrior. Feels a little underwhelming for how dangerous and defended this particular test seems to have been. If I remember correctly, there is a way to land on the turning, like, gear spokes or whatever. Don't think there's a way for me to make it back just by jumping, which is unfortunate. Oh, but the ground here seems to be broken. Oh, okay, so that's something. Let's see where this takes me. I see. So the intention, I guess, is to land. It is that I should land there. I think I'm gonna see if I have one of those rings that lets me. Yeah, where is it? Because I don't want to lose those 20,000 souls. I think I have one, don't I? It must be on my other character. There's a ring that you can equip that lets you survive death once, essentially, without losing your souls. I guess I used it already, or it's on my other character. Okay, so let's see what happens. Is there actually a path for me to get down there? Oh, there is off to the right. So I'm supposed to fall down onto the gear and then drop off onto one of the other areas, I think. I'm probably going to die. Oh well, let's see what happens. Oh. Oh, that's not ideal. It's not like pushing me off or anything. But even so, now what do I do? Like roll on here? Okay. Okay. That was like fine. What poisoned him? Oh. Okay, yeah. So it looks like he got poisoned by hitting the vat of poison above him with the back of his hammer, and then rather than causing like a poison rain to fall down, it just hit him because he was the one, like he was in close proximity to it. So it's like the poison is applying an AoE damage, and then if you're nearby, it hurts you, and if you're not, it doesn't. Seems to be the case. So that plus the standing on the gear thing, I actually was gonna say that was quite a brilliant moment, because, you know, looking at the ground, seeing that there was a crack in it, feeling stuck, feeling like the game had like forced me into this position, but then, you know, giving it credit and being like, oh well, maybe they wouldn't just trap me here, maybe there would be some way out, and then finding that way out, that was all a very satisfying experience. But then when we actually got down, obviously like there wasn't anything to do. And so, and the well, not that there wasn't anything to do, there was a path back, but it felt like I should have gotten pushed off of the turning rod, which should have then incentivized me to go and find a way to turn the rod off, which should have brought me up here, and then here there should have been something that kind of clued me into the fact that like if I lit this, it would ignite the windmill propeller. So given that we had an introduction to like pitch that you could light back with the Lost Sinner, I feel like that would have been a great opportunity to revisit that and just have some pitch or some sort of little environmental clue, some sort of little indication that was a viable option. I'm trying to figure out how to get back down to, oh yeah. I wanted to go talk to Patches before we do the boss, and I want to get to Laddersmith Gilligan as well. Something that you'll notice as well is that our feet are covered in poison, and this feels a little clunky, but it's still kind of cool that they thought of this, is that if you get poison stuck to your person, to your body, then you will continue to suffer poison damage for a while until you get it off, which is part of the reason why the pool of water earlier is, what the fuck, is so useful. Oh right, I remember this. There's like a something that falls down on you or something like that. Hello, friend. Is there a chest there? Oh no, that's just the drop down. Okay. I was curious about that drop down, so it's good to know that that's where that one's up. Yeah, let's go talk to Patches real quick, or Pate rather.
We went through a lot together. Take this as a token of our friendship.
Damn, okay.
Don't be shy. They were meant for you. Well, we meet again. There's treasure this way, but I have a bad feeling about it. I don't quite have the gun. Well, there's treasure this. I don't quite.
So that obviously felt a little stilted, right? Like we meet him and the first thing that he says is, we've been friends and we've been through a lot together, which we haven't really. And then he just gives us all of his shit, which is just a copy of what he's wearing, I guess, which, where was he holding that? Including his ring and his shield and everything. and then launches into a single line of dialogue about how there is more loot on the other side. And I don't know, that feels incomplete. That feels like there was supposed to be some more like progression between you and Pate, and that was supposed to lead to something greater. And they just kind of didn't have the time or the resources or whatever to successfully implement it. It's a recurring thing with a bunch of the other NPCs as well, because, you know, when you buy enough stuff from Melentia, she just gives you the covetous Silver Serpent Ring, for which she says, you know, here, have these, right? It's always a plural when you're given something, and it feels like they just kind of recorded a few generic, like, here's your quest reward lines, and they don't necessarily feel super organic when you actually experience them in game. So it's a little unfortunate. Not the end of the world or anything, but you know, it does kind of make me kind of reinforce the notion that this area and its parts were not fully realized, unfortunately.
Well, there's treasure this way. I don't quite know.
Okay, so let's see if we can locate the treasure that he's referring to. Keeping in mind that it might be that. I just really hate dealing with the jumping mechanics. Oh, is it this? Yeah, let's see. Forget if it's trapped or whatnot. There we go. Oh, okay. There is a little bit of storytelling happening there, right? Like this was the item before that I said was a little underwhelming. That's currently, that was sort of well guarded, but it felt like, okay, well, why are they guarding this? But people are uncertain about its origins. Could be, especially given everything that the game tells us about Aldia and the horrible experiments that he did that gave rise to powerful objects and artifacts, rather. That this could also have some sort of a sinister origin associated with it. And then, was it Great Heavy Soul Arrow? Yeah, let's see. Low Vortex, Great Heavy Soul Arrow. Nothing too much to glean from that, as far as I can tell. Let's go back and talk to Pate and see what he has to say about it.
Well, good to see that you survived. Perhaps you're more rugged than I thought. In any case, the treasure is yours. I prefer a more cautious approach. For instance, I've heard that a man is out for my life. Now, what misunderstanding could have ever led to that? The poor bloke must have quite an imagination. You be careful too, my friend. For trust can be a dangerous thing. You be careful too.
I do genuinely like the way that they've played with Pate and Crichton, and the idea of sort of what constitutes a companion, who you can and cannot trust, and under what circumstances. I think that's all pretty well done. Oh, I think I remember now. I think you're supposed to stop the motion of the windmill, and then you're supposed to jump across there, because otherwise the gear gets in your way or something like that, or pushes you aside. I could try to jump across. I have a feeling that I'm going to die, but not the end of the world if I lose these souls, especially since I have access to the bonfires. So let's try. See what happens. Ah. Yeah, that felt kind of lame. Not gonna lie. So I want to try to find Gilligan, and then we'll go to the boss. So far, I have to admit that even as a die-hard Dark Souls 2 apologist, I'm not feeling particularly inclined to defend this level. I like its ideas, I like its concepts, I think it has a lot going for it thematically, but there's just so much about it that feels undercooked, like unrealized, and I don't want to be unfair to the developers or anything, but yeah. One good thing that I can say is that the enemy variety is quite awesome overall. Like, I'm contradicting myself with the poison moss. The enemy variety is quite compelling. There's the mannequins, which are just genuinely kind of cool and creepy. There are the desert sorceresses, which are a threat that incentivizes you to engage in like close quarters combat with them. There's, let's see, larger, bulkier enemies, like more traditionally ogre-ish melee enemies. Enemies that have a bit more of an air of mysticism to them, so to speak. Seeing if I can, if I can pick off one of those enemies at a distance first. That's kind of cool also, that given how many obstacles there are in the environment, that even a stealthy enemy might reveal their location, like unintentionally, and I might get the drop on them, or like know that they're coming based on hearing them destroying objects in the environment just by walking over them. That's kind of cool. I think it's time for me to start upgrading that bow to give myself some more ranged options, especially since the scaling on dex is really good. The enemies themselves have quite a varied moveset. There's the standard sort of long distance. Yeah, I do see the object bouncing around like that. The standard sort of long distance, bow, harrying. But there's also... Oops. Is this still locked? Yeah, what the hell? But there's also a wide array of, more fluid, jumping, leaping, dancing almost motions. Their dual claws are interesting weapons and are also capable of doing bleed build up, which presents another type of hazard. So overall, I feel like this level is trying to be, I don't like this phrasing, but like trying to be the Sen's Fortress of Dark Souls 2. God damn it, I always fuck that up. And kind of succeeding, sort of, by creating a series of traps and hazards that are, kind of rewarding to learn about, with a variety of like threatening enemies and all that, but sort of failing to quite capture the sense of it being this gauntlet of survival the previous game was. Well, I say that and I get pelted by the fucking fire over there. I'm trying to figure out, I don't remember that gate being closed in vanilla, and I'm trying to remember how to actually get around to Gilligan through the gate. And I thought you could just... No, you break down those barriers, right? Is there another ladder down here? I'm gonna give this like another 2 minutes, and if I can't figure it out, then I'm just gonna go for the boss. Yeah, so a little overwhelmed, but by this point, I've had plenty of opportunity to kind of expect the ambushes coming my way. And not a big deal. Nice variety of weapons on the mannequins there as well. So, Gilligan is above me. There's clearly something there, but I can't get to it unless I drop down from above. I don't currently have a way to do that very effectively. I don't think that there's a path from below. So this is a little bit more frustrating than I recall. Unless I'm just missing something, but I feel like in the original version of the game there was an easier way to get to him. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like, the idea is that this is a puzzle dungeon. There should be some mystery. There should be some challenge. The fact that it's different from how I remember doesn't mean it's bad or anything. But is there a switch? That, I guess I might be being stupid. Is there a switch or a lever or something? Wow. Holy shit. What just happened? Is there a switch or a lever or something? My brain just decided it was like not going to cooperate for that one. It's bizarre. So I bet there is, and I bet I'm just missing it. But I'm not gonna like spend all night looking for it. I might just try to proceed with the boss and see where that gets me. this is probably a bad idea. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Let's see if I can survey the area and get a clue as to how to get up there. Well, there's definitely a guy over there, but I don't see a path because of the closed gate. I'll just take over here. Maybe the gate opens up every single fucking time. Maybe the gate will open up after I kill the boss or something. It's kind of weird. I feel a little stupid, honestly. I played this so many times, I figured I would know where it was. But it's okay. Now, something I could do, I suppose, is I could go back and get my souls, and then I could homeward bone out in order to not miss those. Might be worth trying to do that, actually. You might have noticed that the that those grave wardens will have been stopping briefly and like reaching down, and I think, oh, it's probably through here, isn't it? I think it's probably the case that they're trying to drink an Estus, and I will say that like there were more enemies that drank Estus more consistently in Dark Souls 1, and I'm not sure why they didn't do it more in 2. Not that it's necessarily a like a flaw, but when they do have enemies try to do it in Dark Souls 2, they're not always very smart about when they try to do so. Like, I feel like the hollows in like the Undead Burg in Dark Souls 1 are more inclined to try to consume Estus when they're further away from you. Might be misremembering that, but that's how it seems to me. Either way, oh yeah, okay, so I found it. Either way, I think it's 1 second. I thought this rises up and it's got like spikes on the bottom of it. Did I imagine that? Like an Indiana Jones trap. Well, either way, I think it's, was it this? Yes. Yeah, okay. Weird. I could have sworn it was the opposite. I could have sworn that, like, the way that played out is... Oh, shit. Hang on. Is the first time you go in here, it's up, and then it, like, tries to smash you. And then you are rewarded for paying attention, and then you look up, and then you're like, oh, okay, there's a path up there now. Maybe I'm misremembering it, but... Yeah. Yeah, I think that was the... It must be a, oh shit, hang on. Okay, there we go. Never mind, okay. So, I think that works either way, right? What I was gonna say is, maybe that was a change that they did in Scholar, and, they just had the trap up there, and it was gonna smash down on you as you come in, and there was the item on the floor that you were kind of lured towards. But I think what they were going for here was, if I'm remembering correctly, that trap might have been remixed for players who had played the original game to kind of surprise them further, which I think is great. You know, you play with the expectations of the people who are coming into the game and make things feel more fresh for them. But it works either way. At the end of the day, like, I looked at my surroundings, I came to a conclusion about them. I was partially correct, and my mistake where I was incorrect could have cost me significantly. But because I was wary, and because I kind of kept my wits about myself, I was able to avoid the trap, even though it was a close call. Okay. Holy shit. And then also, you know, there's a good chance by getting here you would have figured out the breakable railing thing. But if you didn't, you know, here's a hollow sitting on the other side of this railing. You're probably going to try to hit him, and if you do, you'll learn the railings can be broken. So, I mean, this is nothing super complex. It's not rocket science, right? But it's a very nice little way of encouraging a player to create a new path for themselves, so to speak. And then all of my like whining and moaning about not being able to find my way through, now I created a shortcut, and now I can go back to the bonfire, and I feel like I've accomplished a little journey that I set myself on, which is why, again, removing one of the bonfires or taking one of the lower bonfires and moving it up a little bit and making it feel more central, even putting it, I guess it is pretty close. Yeah, I don't know. I'm so conflicted because I feel like they were going for an experience where you would kind of go on a little bit of a winding path and then come and loop back around, unlock a pathway for yourself, and then you'd be good. But also, I don't need this pathway at all to get to the boss, I don't think. Like, there's nothing here, right, that makes it easier for me to get to the boss. That whole pathway was just for me to get to Gilligan, and Gilligan feels like he should be more of a peripheral side thing. So again, like, theme of this area is really cool ideas, really wonky execution. I'm debating whether or not to burn down the windmill. I think I won't, though, because the first time I played the game I didn't, and I'd like to see how painful it is to fight Mytha without doing so. Above bug. Oh, right. I have to upvote those guys. Yeah. And there's nice... I don't think that bug was in the vanilla, but I'll have to go and see. There are nice little gestures like that where there are little environmental secrets to find that I think are pretty cool. You don't get a whole lot of reward from things like that. The reward is the discovery, I guess. I know that's like a little trite to say, but it's true. But yeah, it feels worthwhile.
Shush. You idiot. Stay quiet. I'm on the run. Don't give me away. You're a fugitive too, eh? Yeah. Why else would you be here? It's got death written all over it. You want to climb down here? I can lend you a ladder. But, why, yep. Have you no gratitude?
I'm sorry, I'm skipping through the dialogue.
I let you off. This once.
Sure.
All right. It'll be just a moment.
This character is perplexing to me. Now, on the one hand, the idea of having a character who can specifically work with you for a price to enable access to different areas
Go on ahead. I won't offer this to you twice.
is pretty interesting. I like it. Most NPCs have some kind of utility to the player, whether it's through the form of like a summon or through being a merchant or something like that. So this is an interesting kind of way of giving the player a different kind of relationship with an NPC. Rather than selling you something or giving you something, they give you the option to open up additional pathways. That's really cool. There is something kind of cartoonish and kind of that sort of threatens suspension of disbelief with this particular character for me in a way that it's sort of hard for me to describe. Something about the just producing of letters out of nowhere feels a little bit much. And especially when you get to Majula and he just like seems to generate them through lettermancy or something, it can feel a little goofy, I guess. That being said, let's not slander the artistic direction of the character himself. I very much like the sort of patchwork clothing. You can kind of see the stitching in his pants that kind of suggests that maybe they've been repaired at home or like had some modifications made to them. The fur lining on the various like parts of his and segments of his boots and his shoulder pads and girdle is also a really nice touch. There's some decent texture work here. the little patch on his side over there, you know, just gives a little bit of a hint that he's got something up his sleeve, that he's resourceful, that we've got that little dagger. The way that the dagger actually blends in on his right hand side with the color of his of his like waist, I don't know, like his waist armor, whatever the term for it is, seems to be, you know, giving us a little, it's like slightly hidden by the color itself, which is kind of nice. His stance, his tapping, his foot animation, you know, there's something very charming, kind of like friendly about him that I enjoy. But at the same time, he feels a little bit out of place. His accent feels a little bit out of place, but more so just something about his demeanor, about his attitude, and about his, again, lattermancy is the only word I can think of to describe it. Feels like I'm not getting something, right? Like there's something missing, at least in terms of how this character fits into the overall world. That's an interesting thing. That's very interesting for him to give us that, of all things. Gives us some claws, shield. So, you know, there's stuff we can learn from this for sure. Obviously seems to be associated with thievery, brigandry. This is an item that we can use for a quest later. Bleeding effect. Bleeding. Yeah, so I mean, like, he's presented himself as some sort of a swashbuckling character, perhaps. Some sort of a, I don't know if I would call him an assassin. He definitely doesn't give off that vibe, but you can almost imagine like walking into the Thieves Guild or something and seeing this guy, you know, drinking a mug of ale at a tavern and like rounding up people to go do a mission or something. So I don't know, having a merchant who is more geared towards like bandit themed things is a cool idea, and having that character also be able to get you into places, like unlock places, give you access to different locations or chests or whatever else that you might not be able to otherwise, is cool. But like this whole area, I feel like there's still something missing to really bring him home and make him feel entirely Dark Souls.
Have you heard? Well, apparently, there's this monster lady, right? And the poison does wonders for her body. You know, health, beauty, that sort of stuff. And I thought only human women were so petty. That creature, she was human once, you know. Yeah. In fact, she was wed to the prince of that nearby castle. But her husband, he had feelings for another. The princess was desperate and sought eternal beauty, hoping that he would restore the prince's affection. You see what I mean?
I do like him though.
For long, the princess's ire transformed her into a monster. Now, listen here. When do you think this all happened? Long ago, when this very land was called something else. We say Drangleic now, but countless kingdoms have risen and fallen on this very spot. And this won't be the last. Oh, no. That damned hag just can't let her old flame go. She's going to get us all out. God almighty. I'm not going to die in this dump. God, I'm... Find it?
Yeah, so despite the fact that he is quite quirky, he's also giving us information about the world that we're in overall, and also, of course, about the individual location that we're in, that I think is all entirely valuable. There's a little bit of, like, what is the term? Charlatanry? Is that the right word for it? Of being a charlatan. about him, obviously, because he sells us this ladder that we really don't need if we have any kind of actual vigor, to be able to survive the fall, or especially with the cat ring. So he sells us something that is not particularly useful. It doesn't come across as dishonest. He's not trying to swindle us. It's just that, as far as I can tell, it's just that it's not a very compelling purchase, I guess. But that's on us. But still, it feels like he has a role in the story, that maybe like he has some insider knowledge or something like that, and he's somebody to maybe keep your eye on, but also somebody who could be a potential like useful ally. The narrative about the queen is interesting as well. Let me see, 1 second. So we didn't really look at the covetous demon soul. Let's take a look at that real quick. At some point I gotta go around to find Ornifex and start to get some of these transmuted. Eating is an expression of desire. There once was a man whose deep affections were unrequited. He transformed into the covetous demon, which only made him lonelier than before. He was a special soul, right? So we have an interesting like chain of inheritance, so to speak, of what's going on with people in this land. We have the queen who's infatuated with the prince. The prince is infatuated with someone else. So the queen she decides, oh, it must be my beauty that's the problem. Maybe if I make myself more beautiful, I can lure him in. And so she tries any means that she can to make herself more beautiful. But ultimately, the prince is still doesn't return her affections, and so she winds up becoming consumed and transforming into this thing that represents her desire. It's desire itself. It's her will that is transforming and molding and shaping her, and that's a theme that we see consistently throughout all three of the games. The idea that usually, like, the flame is often used as a metaphor for willpower and intent made manifest, and that's no different here. It's just the way that she's doing it is through, I guess, wresting control of the environment, as opposed to like Gwyn manipulating the flame itself. But then we have the covetous demon, who has a very similar yearning for her, and his desire leads him down a different path where his body also is transmuted. And one is transmuting her body in a way that is, I guess, more traditionally accepted to be beautiful. Most people, when they see Mytha, would probably say that she is more beautiful than the covetous demon, who appears to be more grotesque. But at the end of the day, they're both driven by the exact same thing. They're both pursuing the exact same thing in their own way. And it is that yearning, that want, that desire that warps them and transforms them, and also the world around them. And when we get to the end of the game, spoiler alert, the thing that we are rewarded with after the final boss battle is called the Throne of Want. And our last act in this game is to essentially be told, cool, you killed everything that was in your way, you got all the way here, and now you get to do what you want. But also, think about all of the people that you encountered up to this point that also did what they want and manifested their will, their want, their desire into the world through power. What was the effect of all of that? Where did they go? What happened to them? What did they become? How do they transform themselves and their environments? Are you prepared to do the same thing? Are you even fucking capable of and worthy of trying to become a monarch like they were, when you know that all of these people before you failed? And when you decide to walk away from the Throne of Want, Aldia, I think, in Scholar, is just like completely fucking baffled. He's just like, wait, I mean, I know that we're all cursed. I know this is, the whole world is a stage, but you have to play your part, right? You can't just walk away. It doesn't make any sense. What do you say? Like, beyond the scope of light, beyond the reach of dark, like, what could possibly await us? He's just like flabbergasted at the idea that somebody could come up with an option C. But that's up to you. Like, do you decide to be the next in line for the throne, or do you decide to issue the throne or like circumvent the throne entirely. It's up to you. So, Mytha being a character who kind of let her desire, if you want to phrase it that way, kind of consume her, is a great example of one of the reasons why we might want to be careful about following that path. So here's something that I see people mention when they are critical of enemy placement and stuff in this game, is that there are two enemies up there with shields and spears in a defensive position that make it very hard to kind of get through the doorway. There's a poison pool, which will poison you, obviously, and there's an enemy in here that you might not see coming. Oh, also, oh, never mind. I had this whole thing prepared. 1 second. So I was gonna say I think people are upset, at least in part, because thought I could roll the poison off. Maybe that's from a different game. They were upset, at least in part, because sorry, I need to focus for 1 second for whatever reason. Because those enemies would basically like force them to fight in the poison pool, and then they'd be kind of screwed. It's annoying to have to deal with them. And so I had this whole speech I was going to give about how it's actually not so bad, because you can just you know, kite the enemies away and fight them one-on-one. But then I realized that like once you get into the pool, they just chase you anyway, so it's really not that big of a deal. Okay. So, oh, I got poisoned again. What the hell? So it's kind of unfortunate. I will say, you know, feeling like you have to go into the boss fight every single time with like a couple of flasks down or whatever, just because you got poisoned on the way in there, it could be a little bit frustrating. I'm not saying it's perfect game design or anything like that, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as everybody says. So everybody, the critics say. So I'm going to try and see how well this goes. I'm going to probably be focused up and not going to be talking too much, but I am going to be trying to pay attention to what moves the boss actually uses. Do they feel fair? Do they feel like well paced and balanced? Do I have enough time to heal? And how severe is the healing, is the poison with respect to like how much health I have at this point in the game. So let's see how it goes. Okay, that was a lot. Oh, I thought that there were like parts of the arena that were filled with poison and others that weren't. Okay. This is really like... Oh, and the poison is healing her. Okay, wow. That's a lot. That's cool. Okay, I'm obviously gonna die. Wow, okay. So I had a completely different recollection of this fight. That is a really cool boss design, though. I really like that character design. You may have noticed, potentially, that the scream that she makes is the exact same scream that the banshees, or whatever those enemies are called, in Dark Souls 1 make. They're the ones that they hold the babies, like the ghosts down in Anor Londo that are holding like what appear to be dead infants. Not Anor Londo, New Londo ruins, and they make that exact same scream sound. I don't think that's necessarily like deliberate anything in the storytelling or whatever. I think that's probably just you know, a quirk of the sample library that was used or whatnot. So let's see what happens if I try to cheese this and get around. Well, it wasn't very productive. Okay. I know those two are coming up behind me. Let's see what happens if I try to just burst her down as quickly as possible. Do I have any resin that I could use? Yeah, let's try the aromatic ooze. Yeah, that goes. Okay. Obviously, I have the Elizabeth mushroom, but I'm hesitant to use it since it's a one use only. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the fact that she's healing at the same time is what really makes it hard. Is there any way to stop her from doing that? Oh, does she only heal up to a certain cap? Oh, it's still going up. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it feels like I just don't have time to do anything because healing is... the amount of damage I'm taking is just so much. And the poison is keeping me zoned with those magic attacks as well. But, you know, I can burst her down quite a bit, but she's healing. Yeah, so... I don't know. Not a fan of this at the moment. I have to think about it. Regardless of whether or not like I wind up agreeing with this boss design, I feel like it's pretty fair to say that this is a massive difficulty spike, especially after what was it? The Covetous Demon was basically a pushover, which he's supposed to be, you know, narratively speaking. That's not a flaw, but I mean, that is just, there's so much going on there. Part of the way that the Jesus Christ that the encounter is tuned is that, or sorry, part of the way that the rhythm of combat in this game is tuned is specifically around, you know, stamina management, obviously, and having to heal constantly because you're constantly taking poison damage is just kind of ridiculous in terms of how much of your stamina it takes up. And I'm not seeing like... Okay, you know what? Hang on. Let me try this. They're still coming. 1 second. Also forgot to mention when I was talking about the lore that I think the idea is that this entire place has been made into a windmill, and everything surrounding it were created specifically to draw poison out of the earth. So it's not just that like the queen found like a jar of poison or a poison merchant or something and started using it as a cosmetic. She literally terraformed this whole area and created an entire industry around sucking poison up out of the ground to make yourself more beautiful. So learning that at the end of it, you kind of come through this sort of perplexing and odd and eccentric place filled with traps and hazards and poison and all that. Then you come to find out the reason why it exists, and it feels much more can I say, it adds all this context retroactively that I think makes it all the more compelling. I don't want to use my Radiant Life Gems. I also don't want to use my Estus Flask. But I want to try something and see if keeping her at range and using like arrows does anything better for me. Let me start by using a Common Fruit and Green Blossom, Poison Moss, and then I'm going to try this and just see. Right, like... Use the moss? What the hell? Wait, what? Oh, I did, and it just went by that fast. Okay. Okay, well, zoning her doesn't seem to really be working very well. Arrows aren't doing shit. He's healing too fast. Okay. Nope. So, I think what this boss is meant to do, what it's trying to incentivize, is a player coming up with new novel strategies to try to defeat her, to try to find what her weaknesses are. I think that it's trying to force the player out of their comfort zone and say, okay, look, you're just not going to be able to beat this enemy the way that you normally would, so you're going to have to come up with something else and maybe use your resources. Like use your consumables, something like that. The problem that I have with that is that consumables are, by their nature, like sometimes difficult to come by and not a reliable source of stuff. And so, if oh shit, if you're gonna try this over and over again, anytime you fail, you're essentially running the risk of 1 second of running out of those consumables pretty quickly. So if the strategy requires you to use something that is a scarce resource, then it just makes the process, it adds an additional step to the process of preparing for the boss battle that some people might find annoying, myself included. That being said, I want to see what happens if I try to use this. Okay. Oh, another variation on that attack. I don't think that's going to work. I'm just going to call that right now. What if I just go like, okay, alright, well, that can happen too. Oh, and that sucks because you're taking poison ticks while she's hurting you. Yeah, this is really rough because the moment I start to... I have to heal, right? Otherwise I'm going to die from the poison. But the moment I try to heal, she starts moving towards me. If not via input reading, then something that feels very similar to that. There might just be something that I'm missing, but ultimately, I'm not entirely sure. I feel like what this is doing is just pushing me to go to another level to get stronger to come back. And if I do that, by the time I come back, I'm just going to have more brute strength and be able to like grug through it, as opposed to really having learned a new strategy. So I feel like what I'm supposed to do is just come up with some kind of new plan or tactic. I feel like if I just like leave the level entirely, I've kind of missed the point. So let's see. I do have Poison Bite Ring. And Ring of Blades is good. Aranthe Ring +1 is still probably good, but let's see what else. I got Life Ring, Dark Quartz Ring. Steel Protection isn't really going to help me that much. It might actually. So I'm going to take a moment and just look at what options I have and see if I can find something with better poison resistance. So what is the best poison resistance item I have? Okay, it only goes up by 2 points. So actually what I'm wearing right now is the best poison resist thing that I have. Oh, except for Mastodon armor, but that's like way heavier. So that goes up by a few points, 4 points. What about, have any headgear? Okay, so that'll put me at 10. Still not a whole lot. I burned through my moss really fucking quickly too. Okay, that's helping out a little bit. I don't think this is really going to make the difference, but that is super heavy. I can't do that. That's still a bit too heavy for my build, so now I feel like I have to... Yeah. I take these off. These are 14. Oh, this is just a 7? Fuck that. 33, 14. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I have a ton of options, maybe as a result of my overall build. But I'm just going to get totally demolished when I run in there. I can try this. I definitely don't need that as much as I need this. So resistance to spells. Let's try a Ring of Steel Protection. And then let's see what I have. I could just go and buy a bunch of life gems and try to power through it. Maybe that's what I was expected to do. I know I can just go burn the the effigy, or not the effigy, the windmill. But I don't want to do that because I don't think all players will be aware of that. Okay, so let's see. A little too soon on that. Okay. Gonna preemptively pop an Estus over here. Might just be like an Estus check, honestly. Okay, let's try to heal. Oh, it interrupted my healing? Are you fucking kidding me? Okay, I can do this. It's just hard. But if I time my heals correctly, I could probably do this. Especially with that. If she's gonna jump. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. This is really hard, but it's not impossible. I probably fucked that up. Okay. I see. So they just want you to, like, really be prepared to get up close with her. Damn it. Okay. Call me a liar. Alright, I'm running out of Estus here. I could probably still do this, though. That was close. 2, 3, 4. Okay, let me pop the life gem to get some passive healing. Okay. Could probably do it. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. Alright. Alright. Okay. I'm gonna die, though, if I'm not careful here. Which way? Forget the other souls. Dragon Charm. Okay. Alright, that was actually kind of fun. So, for the record, I could totally understand why somebody would get to that point in the game and be like, okay, fuck it, this game wants me to suffer. Like, I was feeling it. I was starting to get a little bit frustrated. But, I mean, like, I spent 8 hours figuring out how to beat Melania. I spent probably the same amount practicing what the hell is it called? The Demon of Hatred from the end of Sekiro, right? Like, I can spend time learning how to beat bosses, and within a half an hour, right? I've only been here at this boss for about half an hour. I was able to... I don't think those are worth getting. Oh, fuck it. I was able to, I think, come up with a reasonable strategy. Yeah, it wasn't worth it. To deal with the boss. Kind of a waste, but... And figure out, like, the fact that... Okay, how can I explain this? I was basically just, like, feeling overwhelmed by this thing. And my inability to deal with it was coming from that sense of overwhelm. And I wasn't actually trying to study it and understand, like, how and why it was working. If that makes sense. Now, here is the infamous thing. Where everyone starts to lose immersion in the game. And this is one of those things where I don't have any counter argument, not really, to people's consternation with the game. But it doesn't really bother me for a reason that I can't quite explain. I feel like it maybe should. Here's something that probably should bother me is the textures over here. If you look closely, the texture on the bottom was separated from the ground for a little while. It looked kind of glitchy, and it's pretty low resolution. The texture I'm referring to specifically is the metallic texture that goes all the way around the walls and stuff. So, to me, that's not particularly well executed. But people have been upset about the fact that, you know, you start off in... What's cool is a little divot or something in the ceiling there. That you start off in a poison swamp area, poison valley, with the massive windmill and the structure behind it, and then you go up on the elevator and you come out in a completely different biome. And to me, I always thought that the narrative was pretty clear, that you were like going into the mountain a bit for the Mytha boss fight and then kind of ascending above it to this area, and this was like a caldera that was just above Earthen Peak. Like Earthen Peak is right over there, just but fuck, just behind it. You know what I mean? But I guess to a lot of people that feels immersion breaking. It feels like it's impossible for this area to exist above Earthen Peak. And I kind of get it, but I also, for whatever reason, a reason I can't explain, it just doesn't bother me. I think it's meant to kind of evoke a feeling of a dreamlike disconnect, you know, like a liminal space kind of thing. I don't think it needs to be literal in the way that it transfers between spaces. I don't think it's wrong to want that. I think especially for fans of Dark Souls 1, like myself, asking for a world that feels cohesive and like every part flows naturally to the next definitely feels good, feels appropriate. I'm getting invaded over here. But I don't think the lack of it is necessarily something that ruins the game for me, at any rate. A backstab Fisher. Of course, I am not spec'd for PvP at all, so this is going to go poorly. I also haven't changed my items from before. Oh shit. Nice. I think that's the Flexile Sentry Sword. Got a really nice dueling moveset. And of course, here comes this goofy ass fucking swordsman. That's fair. This area is a PvP hotspot, which I find a little irritating. Like I'm not really interested in PvP. I like getting invaded when it feels like a game of cat and mouse with the invader, when they're just somewhere out there in the world waiting for you. But when you get into these choke spots, these hot spots, whatever, where you just know you're going to get forced into PvP over and over and over again because they're going to keep summoning or whatnot, it's a bit irritating. That being said, something you can do is you can go to burn in the bonfire menu and you can pick human effigy, and it says it prevents invasions, right? So it'll give you a period of time where you just won't be invaded at all. And so if it gets too much, you can cancel out invasions without even having to lose your like to manually go offline or whatever. So still protection here is still good. Ring of Blades is still good. Chloranthy Ring goes back on, and I think Covetous is probably fine. You know, we always need souls. Not exactly optimized, but definitely, you know, valuable. So a couple of interesting things to mention about this space before we get into the main area is just that there's something very visually compelling, in my opinion, going on with the way that the chains are arrayed here. And if you follow the chains from the buildings to the arches upwards, you'll notice a statue of what appears to be an angel or a goddess or something like that with the chains in her hands. Now you can interpret that as she's releasing the chains, or you can interpret it as she's actually holding the chains, and it's meant to be a representation of this angelic figure pulling the Iron Keep up from the morass of lava that it's slowly sinking into. I like the idea that this keep is made out of iron, and the iron is so heavy that it's causing it to sink into the earth. But in a futile attempt to stave off that effect, they use more iron. And the iron is kind of like intertwined with an image of something divine or ascendant in the form of the angel, in order to try to elevate it. But of course, it's incredibly futile. It's completely nonsensical, not from a design standpoint, but from a narrative standpoint. And so the king engaged in this pursuit is completely like fucking gone. And it's just a great way of depicting that, I think. This is also kind of reminiscent of the statue that we saw in the Lost Bastille. It's a bit different, of course. There's nothing in his right hand, as far as I can tell. So, I don't think it's necessarily meant to be the same person. the appearance is quite different, but it's interesting that we see the same character depicted in a couple of different ways. On this side, we see, I think it's the same guy. It could be a different character, but it looks like the same guy, depicted in more of a military attire, slightly. Over here, more of a scholar, something a bit more regal about him, something a bit more formal here. I don't know if that's making any sense. I'm probably not using the right words, but in the same way that we can see different depictions of the same god, but rendered quite differently, I think that's the intention here, to show the different sides or aspects of the king. But notice that it almost looks like there's a shackle on his right arm, or like a bracer or something, and the chain is going directly through that. There's also all these individual swords, which look like just random swords that you could get from a blacksmith, right? Just not even the katanas that we've seen wielded by the Alun knights that we fought so far, but just regular long swords that are stabbed through the chains as well. So there seems to have been like a manic and kind of oddly creative, but completely ridiculous attempt to keep the keep together. And we can see that through some of the storytelling that's happening in the environment. So already, like, coming into this place, there's a lot of intrigue being built. Sharon over here, I think she shows up a couple of times, and I am a little mixed about her equipment, because if I remember correctly, that sword that she has in her left hand is the puzzling stone sword. It's a really cool weapon. It's from one of the DLCs, and part of what's so cool about it is that it is that its special attack allows it to extend almost like a chain whip outward, if it's the one I'm thinking of. And so I think you might have seen her do an attack that looked like a longer whip, like sweeping attack, and that was that particular weapon's like special ability. Very cool, but when you find it in the DLC, it feels like you're discovering something kind of like very unique and special and almost alien and foreign, and so that adds to the mystique of the weapon. And when Sharon shows up and she just like has it, to me it runs the risk of making your discovery later on potentially feel a little bit less valuable, like you just found another one, you know what I mean? But that's just one way to look at it. Okay, so this, I think I am going to go ahead with it because we're here anyway, and I think it's worth examining. I've been hearing a lot of chatter about the difficulty specifically of this part of the game, and specifically from people who favor melee builds, who don't perhaps feel like they have much opportunity to engage with the knights at a distance. Sorry, I lost my train of thought a little bit. What I was trying to say is that, like, listening to Dark Souls 2 critiques online, I've noticed that a lot of people are a bit fed up with this level. They find it a bit overwhelming. They find that they don't have sufficient options to deal with the hordes of knights that are coming their way, and they feel like they have to engage in this sort of tedious exercise of fighting the same enemies over and over again, and not just that, but getting ganked and overwhelmed by them to get to the boss fight. And specifically, the people who tend to make these observations are those who prefer melee builds. And so what I want to try to do is go through and with a melee build, without using any ranged attacks or anything like that, see how that holds up, in my opinion. Is it tedious? Is it a pain in the ass? Am I getting totally overwhelmed? Am I getting ganked? So far, I've dealt with a bunch of individual enemies, but they've been part of a squadron, I suppose, of multiple enemies. But they've all kind of taken their time and approached me one by one. I've had plenty of time to see them coming. I haven't felt overwhelmed at all. So far, I'm not feeling like I resent the space at all. Oh, hey, Konakun. Really good to see you. How you doing? You say you're still alive and kicking. Good, good. I'm really glad. Yeah, I remember that you were going through a rough time. Um, how are you feeling? Have things gotten any better? I imagine not much, because not much time has passed, but hopefully you've had some chance to rest up a little bit. Um, take care of yourself. Staying connected with friends and family and all that. I'll actually take this time. I think I actually just got a delivery. So I am going to, I think, run to the bathroom, grab a drink, and then we'll proceed into the keep. This seems like a decent time to take a quick break, with the boss having been defeated. And then Konakun, yeah, thank you for checking in. I really do appreciate you letting me know that you're still in one piece, and love to know what's going on in your life. Hopefully things are okay. I'm going to pause briefly. I think I'm just going to leave it up on this screen rather than do the break screen because it might mess with my setup. So please be patient. I'll be right back. Okay. Okay, I'm back. Thanks for your patience. Konakun says, it's difficult stepping on ants without crushing them. This is true. And is that from Aizen? Is he from Bleach? I still haven't got caught up on Bleach yet. How would you say Bleach compares to Naruto overall? In terms of like fights and character development and world building. Do you have a favorite? It's a weird noise. I don't know if that came through on the mic. Oh, but yeah, I'm really glad you stopped by. Don't give up the fight. So, interesting that I got invaded again. But it's kind of fun to have a rematch with this guy too. Ooh. Okay. Definitely feels a bit overwhelming, not gonna lie. And having the NPC, hi, hello friend. Okay, I gotta get out of this situation. I don't recall there being this many like individual NPC fighters or invaders. Sorry, Kona, I think I saw you message, but I gotta focus for just 1 second. Oh man, that is so damaging. Come on, backstab. Nope, no dice. Kona says, Preoccupied with a single leaf, you'll miss the entire tree. Preoccupied with a single tree, you'll miss the entire forest. Suppose that's true. What, yeah, it's good to try to achieve a sense of balance in your perspective overall, right? Like, if you don't take the time to focus on individual details, you'll wind up missing out on a lot of what makes things special. Like, I mean, it's just my perspective, but maybe some people would say that I'm too nitpicky or overanalyze or something. But when I look at a game like Dark Souls, I can't help but say that my enjoyment of it comes in large part from my ability to find, or not my ability, like, there are so many little fine details in every aspect of the game, and it's that care and attention to detail which is a huge part of why I love it, right? So, but that being said, like, if you only focus on the minor detail or the small things, then it becomes like you might miss out on larger themes, you might not spend your time getting to just immerse yourself in the world itself, stuff like that. I think there needs to be a balance between those things. Now, I haven't gotten to this part in my vanilla playthrough yet, but I don't remember it being this hard in vanilla. I think Dennis might have been added in for Scholar. And on the one hand, I really do like the rematch with this recurring character who's like invading us and stalking us through the world, kind of like Navlon does later on. And so I don't mind this encounter. I do think that having Spencer Sharon immediately followed by this, in an area that is also like very heavily populated with player invaders, which I'm pretty sure the devs would have been aware of, that this area became kind of a PvP hotspot. That to me feels like a little bit excessive, but still, like, there are ways that you can I feel like some players might also really enjoy the challenge and like having a bunch of, player similar humanoid enemies to fight. And then navigating, and especially for players who don't play online as much or at all, having an area where they get invaded by NPCs the way that others would get invaded by players, and having those NPCs have multiple different builds that they can use and stuff like that, also makes some sense, right? Yes, this is hard. Yes, I feel a little bit overwhelmed, but there's also plenty of ways to react to the incoming challenges. The bonfire is right close by. You get a tangible reward of souls and human effigy from every enemy you kill. And the enemies are also like showing off a variety of different moves and stuff. Like, you get the puzzling stone sword that was on display before. You also get the what's it called? Yeah, all of Dennis's new moves that he didn't have before. It kind of feels like Dennis has been growing into a menace over the course of the game alongside you. I'm sorry about that one. And now with your rematch, it's kind of like Ash versus your rival in Pokemon. You can kind of see all the new tricks he's learned and whether or not he's kept up with you or vice versa. So I like that a lot, actually. I can understand why somebody would be like, fuck, another one? Like, they get invaded by a player, then 2 difficult NPCs back to back. It's a lot, but I don't know. I kind of like it. Konakun says, I actually like Bleach more. It's my favorite of the big 3. Versus Bleach, second is One Piece, and Naruto is third, but that's just me. Okay, cool. Yep. I haven't caught up on One Piece either. For an extremely petty reason, I just don't like, I don't like characters with stretchy arms. I don't know why. Like, I can't deal with, like, Gumby, for example. I just can't deal with it. Something about it just really rubs me the wrong way. I know that's really weird, but, yep. but I've heard good things about Bleach. I heard that Bleach was like really incredible for a while, but then there was like a massive fall off. Like the author went through some stuff, or and the manga itself kind of suffered as a result. I don't know if that's sounding familiar at all. I started reading Vagabond, says Konakun. I'm on chapter 50, and it really helped me out. Oh, that's cool. Vagabond, that's not. Oh, I was thinking of Vinland Saga. Vagabond is that the one with the guy who's like the teenager who's part of like the local criminal organization, and he tries to like move his way up the ranks. Or am I thinking of something else? Yeah, I'm glad that you found something you resonate with. Man, Berserk, not to put too fine a point on it, kind of got me through some difficult times. Like, it was definitely a source of like media comfort and focus for me in a pretty difficult time. Something about, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, just the character of Guts, like struggling through adversity, like somehow finding a way to continue persisting despite all the horrible shit happening to him. Like, that's a very relatable thing, and the sort of encouragement that a lot of people, I think, can resonate with. Konakun says Vagabond also has some of the hardest quotes ever. Here is one: "My sword is one with the heaven and the earth." That's great. I love that. It reminds me of was "My drill is the drill; it shall pierce the heavens" from what's it called? Gurren Lagann. Let's talk to this guy over here. So, fans of Dark Souls 1 will probably recall that this character is like very reminiscent of Donald from Dark Souls 1, and we've gotten a little bit of a hint as to what his character is like. First, by the fact that he's just kind of like sitting in this incredibly hostile place, attempting to, I don't know, sell rocks or potatoes or whatever the fuck is in there to people. Whatever the hell he's doing, who knows? But also, I think we have his hat, and if we go, or like the same hat that he is wearing, and if we go and look at it, it says, "Hat worn by merchants from Lanifer, where blue represents knowledge. Wearing this increases item discovery. Lanifer is the farthest land to the south, and follows the strict edict of isolationism. The rare visitor from Lanifer is always a little odd." So we have a little bit of a preview into sort of what this character is going to be like, what his deal is, and what to expect from him, just from finding an item that we can either start with or purchase early on in the game. And so it's nice to kind of see that come full circle. And let's see what he actually has to say.
What? Who are you? Who, me? I'm Magarold. Who else? What? Have a look at my wares.
Oh, that's right. So this character is completely baffling to me, in a good way. But he has some of the weirdest items in the game, and some incredibly useful and esoteric and cool items just kind of out of nowhere. So he has fucking Darkstorm, like a hex from Navlon, like the most powerful and dangerous sorcerer in the game. He has all of these carvings of trees that can, if you throw these on the ground, they make sounds that, let you quote unquote communicate with other players by saying little phrases. He has the curse bite ring, right, which helps resist curse and has a very dark and sordid past to it. I think it actually costs the exact same number of souls in this game as it did in the previous game. This is a little tidbit, but I could be wrong about that. And then all of this shit with like each of these gestures items has something really weird that it does, and a very unique and interesting effect. So the tights reduce falling damage, so I could buy that and then jump down the pit and Majula. Buying this is useful because it increases your soul gain. I think it stacks with the whatchamacallit, the covetous silver serpent ring, right? Nullifies critical hits. Like, that's kind of insane as well. And he also has the ability to use incense, which are these items that you can pick up that will reduce the amount of intelligence or faith that is required for you to use a spell. So let's say I really wanted to learn Great Soul Arrow, and I don't want to invest a full 14 points in intelligence. Right now I only have 5, and I'm willing to invest 13, right? Or I only want to invest 10, actually. Well, if I bring him 4 incenses, he can reduce this down to 10, and then I can use this specific spell, despite the fact that I don't have the intellect for it. So it's such a cool and interesting and weird mechanic that you're like warping the level of intellect required to understand an abstract concept down in one specific instance so that it is understandable by an idiot like myself so I can fire the spells off. Then later on, he becomes the locus of the Dragon Covenant. He's just so fucking baffling. I need to go learn the lore of this character because so much is dumped into him. Don't take that the wrong way. That he feels like he's, I don't know, like no spoilers or anything, but he feels like he is like Gontar Dim from the Witcher 3 DLC. You know, like there's something going on with this guy that you don't want to fuck with. But of course, you can just kill him. He's just a normal person, as far as I know. He's just, I guess, really, really good at scouring the land for some of the most esoteric and valuable trinkets, and also just figured out how to like warp the nature of magic itself while he was at it. So very, very perplexing character. But also very interesting. Konakun says Bleach falls off after Soul Society. Oh, yeah, that's definitely something I've heard before. I think I've heard people talk about scaling like X, Y, or Z character versus the Soul Society or something like that. The most NPC take ever, and it's not even true. My favorite arc in Bleach comes after Soul Society. Well, that's fine. My most NPC take ever is that the Land of Waves in Naruto is the best. Like, I think there are definitely amazing things that happen afterwards that are extremely enjoyable, that I love, and also there's something that's just so special about the Land of Waves and the world that was set up there. And once like Gamabunta shows up, basically once Naruto can summon giant animals, the power level, like power cliff or whatever of the series just like shifts permanently and never really goes back. You know what I mean? So regarding these enemies, so far I am, well, first of all, if I'm remembering correctly, a nice little tidbit is that you might notice that they roar when they die, and the roar sound effect that they make is identical to the one made by the Black Knights in Dark Souls 1. So they are, you know, meant, I think they are implied in a few different ways, but also in a way that's reinforced by the audio to be thematically connected and linked to the Black Knights from Dark Souls 1. Now, obviously, they are not Gwyn's Knights. They are very decidedly not Gwyn's Knights, but they nonetheless have a similar role in the story, or like a similar function from a gameplay perspective. Now, so far, I am finding that I'm slightly overwhelmed by the number of enemies that are firing at me. Like, I have to keep on my toes. But if I use my positioning correctly, and I'm careful, not feeling like I'm totally getting screwed, that one archer on the bridge is definitely giving me some trouble. But it's not the end of the world. I think I don't want to fall down there, right? Because I don't think I'll survive that fall. I forget. But yeah, so far, I can definitely see why doing this like 15 times in a row on your way to a boss would be a pain in the ass. But I'm not seeing it as being like a deal breaker for me so far. I think I don't want to open that just yet. Oh, right. I can go down here. Up. Okay. I heard something. So far this feels like, I don't know, it's definitely tense. I definitely have to keep my head on a swivel, but I'm assaulting a castle. Like, I think it should kind of feel that way. I like the fact that some of these enemies have multiple, multiple, like, weapons that they can use. It's a little annoying that that one on the bridge is still, still sniping me, you know, just because it takes a long time to kind of do anything. It feels like a little annoying. I think it just look like I'm looking for things to be upset about. I can definitely see why people might not like the arc of the weapon. You know, it seems to home in to a bit of a ridiculous extent. This fight on the bridge is kind of tense. Like the way that the lock-on snapped around a little bit was, I felt like it was a little bit disorienting, so I could understand why that would be, you know, a little bit not to someone's liking. We lowered the bridge on one side, but it's still not fully lowered. There's still a couple of enemies. Let's see what the best way to go about this is. If we just follow down the stairs. Whoa. Okay, that was a bug. That was kind of goofy. Oh, I see the lever. Okay, so the logical path seemed to me to be down the stairs. Notice that we also have railings on one side of the stairs that kind of prevent players from falling off, and like it kind of, at least I feel kind of inclined to hug the railing for safety, and in doing so, you know, I feel like, okay, it brings me down here. I can see the chest. I can see that area. Maybe that's a little too risky. Maybe I want to come back to it later because it's on fire. Oh, and I'm coming back up. I'm still hugging this, and my camera is right where it needs to be to see the lever. I think it's not too hard to figure out that that is there as long as you're paying attention. If I drop down, okay, that wasn't too bad. I've dealt with, I think, about 10 enemies in total thus far, and those enemies are all defeated at this point, so nothing is currently harassing me while I'm down here. I see that there's one more enemy up there. That's fine. Deal with him later. Let's go through the door and see what happens. Go through the door. Nobody in here. Okay. Get some titanite. That's always good. And then coming up these stairwells, and then we'll see there's a bit of an ambush sort of here, where if you hit the sides of the, yeah, if you hit those things, they explode and fire, so you might need to be concerned about that. But this is a cool fight, right? Like, this guy has special armor. He's got a lightning sword. The lightning sword is also doing bleed build up. You know, you got the fires exploding on the side. Feels like a little mini boss. You gotta try to avoid the fire sources. You gotta keep in mind that he's doing multiple forms of damage to you. Yeah, that all feels like pretty intense, pretty enjoyable. I understand why maybe you might want to do it like 10 times in a row or whatever. But as an initial sort of pass through, it all feels Shrek jumping fatty. Okay, it got me. That feels fine. Like, I don't, certainly not like feeling any anger or resentment towards it whatsoever. I think it remains to be seen if I decide to rush through the area to get to the next boss or whatnot, how I'll feel about it then. This area is kind of terrifying for some reason, just having the abyss of lava below you, to me, is pretty scary. So now I've opened up this pathway. The bridge is fully retracted, or lowered. Retracted, the opposite of that. Jeez. Let's see what happens if I just rush across the bridge. I've got this guy on the other side. Hey, I know I saw one more to the left. Gotta be wary of that guy. He just fired an arrow. Let's see what happens if I rush over to him. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I got ambushed. Okay. Oh, okay. Getting ambushed. I'm probably gonna die. Yep. Okay. So that is a lot. That's a lot of enemies at once. Okay. So now that I've experienced that ambush once, let's see what happens if I go through again. Do I find it tedious? And again, none of these are rhetorical questions. The point here is that I'm trying to genuinely ask myself if I agree with some of the criticism that's been levied against the game. So far, you know, I'm not doing anything fancy with my weapon, right? I'm actually being kind of stupid. I'm just Mostly, I'm just light attacking with R1s. Mostly, I'm just, like, doing very simple melee attacks. I'm not rolling around at all. You know, I'm just kind of waiting for an opportunity to attack and then going in. Nothing fancy, no backstab fishing. No complex, like, bait and switch tactics. Maybe here, I guess you could call that. I got hit from behind. So there I got flanked. Okay, gotta change my positioning up a little bit. Okay, this is a bit much. 3 of them at once. But I could go up here. Let me try this. I don't think I'll be fast enough. Yeah, I think they're gonna get me. Yep. Sucks. That sucks. That sucks. Okay. I don't like that. Getting stuck on the geometry. Konakun says, "Have you listened to Linkin Park?" I have, yes. I used to love Linkin Park. Haven't listened to them in a while. But yeah, Meteora and Hybrid Theory were, like, played non-stop for a few years. Are you a Linkin Park fan as well? They're still touring, right? They, it's tragic what happened with the previous lead singer. They, I think, have a new lead singer that was causing some amount of controversy, if I remember correctly. I don't remember why. It does kind of suck that I lost all those souls, but it's nothing I can't recover from. Especially since, you know, I've already gotten like 4,000 or 2,500. Now, I got ganked last time, so let's see what happens. Okay, I see them coming in. Keeping in mind that we could always go back to another area to, like, level up if this is too overwhelming. But so far, it's a lot, but it doesn't feel like it's too much. As long as I'm careful. Right, like, it was reckless of me to come back here. I do think it's sort of like weird logic that whatchamacallit, the ballista is in there. So let's see what happens if I try to, okay, just come out through here, and I'm gonna have 2 guys run at me, right? Somebody come from behind. No, that was a phantom. Okay. So this guy's gonna come at me from the other side. That guy continuing to hit me with those arrows is really annoying, though. I'm not, like, a huge fan of that. But I can also use the walls as cover. So let's just see. I go right at him. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Is there anybody coming from behind? Just check my corners. Nope. Okay. There's one guy up there. Okay, I can see. So if I look right now, I see that there's the one guy with the bow over there. Then there's one guy up there. So there's 3 guys in total. This guy's coming towards me, and the other one's coming too. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay. I wasn't expecting that. And I get pushed up and I die. Okay, I'm starting to see why people don't like this so much. I feel like I'm being pretty cautious. I feel like I'm being pretty, you know, conservative in my actions. So let's see if I take a different approach, what happens. So part of the refrain about Dark Souls is that it's hard but fair, and that if it's if you try something and you're failing, but that's the game essentially trying to tell you that there's a better way to do things. So one option is just that I haven't upgraded my shit enough, and that I'm too low level for this area, and that the game is telling me that I should come back and try again later. Got distracted there. But I don't want to throw in the towel just yet. I want to see if I can just overcome this through switching up my tactics. So I forget where each one of them was. There were 2, right? Okay. I also might just need a better weapon because mine is not long or fast enough to consistently deal with these guys. Konakun says the new sinker is actually good and the fans were the ones causing controversy. Oh, that sucks. Yeah. I hope they give the new singer a chance. I mean, like, can you imagine being in that position? You know, like Linkin Park has such a legacy. The previous singer was so beloved or beloved, however you're supposed to say that. And it's just, um, you know, I'm sure some people consider them irreplaceable. The singer, I mean. So you're stepping into those shoes. I don't know. Have you ever watched Game Grumps? I mean, it's not quite the same at all, but just as an analogy, you know, there was a guy called JonTron who was on this YouTube show called Game Grumps, and JonTron was, you know, along with the other guy, Aaron, one of the creators of the show, and was kind of felt like an irreplaceable part of the show. And so when he announced that he was leaving, I think there was a general sentiment that meant that the show itself was over, like categorically, if that makes sense. Because how could you have Game Grumps without one of the Game Grumps? It just didn't make sense. But then when Danny came along, it was his I don't want to say replacement. He was just the next person to be in the position. I think Aaron told him something along the lines of, no matter what you do, no matter what you say, you are about to get a massive amount of hate from like thousands, like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people on the internet. And there's no real way around that. Are you okay with that? Are you prepared to deal with that? And it's just one of those things that's very unfortunate, but yeah. That being said, I think fans did eventually kind of warm up to it and gave Danny a chance, and I mean, I think he did amazing. After a few years, you know, it kind of just felt like there's two eras of Game Grumps, so to speak. One, that was stupid. Don't do that. But no, don't do, oh my god. Thank you, Dark Souls. That was my fault. But yeah, I guess what I was trying to say with my clunky Game Grumps analogy was just that there's definitely going to be a backfire effect, I think is what it's called, or backlash, where because the thing is new, it's going to be resisted against no matter what. Hopefully they wind up getting a chance to kind of prove themselves. White KSI versus Forest Amped Logan Paul. That might be the most perplexing string of words that I've read in a long time. How best to power skill these two? KSI is already in the thick of it, and he seems to be doing just fine. So I don't know. Going on a there's nothing I can say here that won't be bad. So I'll just say that I don't know. Sorry, I got distracted by the knights. I'll turn my attention back to the question in just a second. I will say that, like, KSI has gone through a lot of hate for that song, and perhaps for other things, like his energy drink or whatever that he was selling that people were upset about for whatever reason. And I guess if you're capable of enduring that amount of nonsense and keeping a smile on your face, then that says something about your constitution. Logan Paul, as far as I can tell, has like never existed in the sunlight. He doesn't look like a person who spends much time like outside in natural light. So I figure if he winds up in a forest, he might just be totally overwhelmed by, you know, the sounds of not LA or wherever the fuck he lives in his weird little fantasy world, and just kind of have an existential crisis and a meltdown. So the forest amp would actually be more of like an antithesis and backfire and cause him to crumble and wither. So I think if KSI has more survivability and like more constitution, Logan Paul has more like vampire prowess. As long as you keep him in the dark or like surrounded by artificial lighting, you can probably last a long time. You know, he has that like I simply won't fucking leave energy. Like, I do not care how many people hate me. I do not care like how many things that like I annoy people with. I am not fucking going anywhere. You can't get me to leave. So as far as I'm concerned, he's like a neon powered vampire, and KSI just has the endurance to continue. What the fuck am I talking about? I don't know these people. But yeah, there's my best answer. KSI wins. Mid to high diff. I want to know more about this forest amp though. Does that mean that he can like summon woodland creatures to his beck and call? To like do his bidding? Man, this sucks. It's just a fucking nightmare. Okay. So, this is definitely... I feel a tangible difference in my experience of the game at this point. And so I have a question, or I have a choice. I can continue to do the same thing over and over again, expecting shit to change. Or I can recall Voss's lesson, and I can go somewhere else and try something different. Let's see what options I have. Because armored enemies are particularly strong against, slashing damage, if I remember correctly. So really, what I should be looking for is something that does some sort of magical damage, which the Dragon Slayer Spear might be able to do, but I have no faith. Heathen that I am. Yeah. The Dark Scythe might work, and the Saint-Tier Spear might also work, except it's not upgraded. But actually, so the Saint-Tier Spear is only a decrease to 233 in damage output. I don't think it can be infused, but I think it can be buffed. So, if I lightning infuse one of my weapons... I mean, the thing is, I could always just kite enemies with a bow. Okay, let's try this. See if this does anything different. I want to experiment with different potential solutions. Okay, so this is obviously not going to be enough damage. But it is staggering them and keeping them at a distance. Basically, I need something that will let me melt them down quickly before they get to me. Kakashi went to Diddy party and never came back. No! He probably just left a, you know what? He probably just did what Killer B did during the Sasuke fight. And he left the Shadow Clone, or like what Madara did, right? He probably left the Shadow Clone and left it at the party and then went about his business and escaped. Went off to start a new life somewhere with Pakun. Oh yeah, Konakun, I do know about that forest thing. Yeah. So the forest amp is just that, like, we bring him back to the forest and, like, the spirits of the people he disrespected haunt him and, like, come get their revenge. Is to hang out with the yokai in the forest or something like that. You know, that was, like, pretty messed up. I'm not gonna lie. No, you know what? I'll go one step further and to say that it was fucking disgusting and reprehensible. I'm sorry, like, I don't know, like, how somebody like that, like, functions. And again, like, I want to be clear, like, if you're a fan of his content and you enjoy what he does, he brings you joy, that's totally fine. I'm not trying to say that you're not allowed to, or anybody else who's watching is not allowed to get joy from someone's antics, I suppose. But, like, it's just very difficult for me to ever understand or have any empathy as to why he would do something like that himself. You know what I mean? Anyway. So yeah, I think the best course of action is probably going to be for me to... Wow, this shit is heavy. What the fuck? Goofy attire. It's probably going to be for me to find an infusion for my weapon and probably find a faster weapon as well. Did I not rest to the... Did I already kill that guy 10 times? Or 12 times? Fuck, really? Huh. Weird. That's pretty effective. But of course I don't have a ranged weapon out at the moment. Let's see what happens if I poke out. The thing about the Saint-Tier Spear is that you kind of want to use it, like, it becomes more powerful when you fully deplete its durability and break it, but that takes forever, and if you upgrade it first, the durability goes up and it takes way longer, and so, yep. So this is not gonna work. I think it has like a unique moveset or something. It's pretty good. Yeah, I'm just probably gonna die here. Yep, okay. Konakun says, I'm clearly a sane name protagonist who hasn't got his character development yet. Well, that's good. That means that you have plenty of intriguing stuff ahead of you, right? The character development arcs are some of the best arcs. And you know, as when I've been thinking, just not to get too personal or anything, but I've been thinking quite a bit about my own like past and such recently, and kind of looking back on moments where I felt like really undeveloped, and or how can I say this? Like, there are times in my life that I definitely felt like, whoa, that's pretty good. I definitely felt like I wish that I had developed in a bit more concrete way. Like, I wish I'd figured out what I'm supposed to be doing. I wish I figured out what my skills are, what my calling is, whatever. And I felt very like adrift. And at that time, I wished that I was like fully formed, I guess, because it felt somehow wrong to not have figured all my shit out yet. And now I'm like, God, I wish I could go back sometimes to that time, because I had more options, had more potential, you know, I had more choices I could make, more mistakes I could make too. Now, like, I'm quite content with where I'm at in life in a lot of ways. There's still a lot of stuff that I want to work on, still stuff that I want to fix even. But having had the opportunity to, you know, develop some of those things, I still feel like, man, what would things have been like if I had gone through a bit of a different, you know, development arc? What did I miss out on by trying X, Y, or Z approach to things? And, you know, it can be a bit nostalgic sometimes to think like that. Ultimately, I would just say, take your time with your development arc. Enjoy it. Even if it's a little scary, a little overwhelming, a little weird, or whatever else. Because, you know, not to be too trite or anything, but it has, you can't even talk. It has intrinsic value, I think. It's one of those things you'll look back on later and reflect on. I haven't even talked about this cool bull over there. Okay, so I do want to try one thing real quick. I think I'm preferring this club approach, and I'm trying to see, like, people always are listening to Feeble King's response to the game. One of the things that he kind of commented on is he didn't know whether the game wanted him to sprint through it or to fight all the enemies. And I can understand now that I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed by the enemies, why he would just want to sprint through. So I wanted to see what would happen if I just like ignored the enemies and sprinted through. So far, I'm not really having fun with this. With the stream, I am, but with the Iron Keep, I'm not. That being said, you know, I'm playing in a very limited, kind of narrow-minded capacity, right? Oh, sorry for that noise. Just had a drink of my Sprite here. So what happens if I sprint through the other way? I don't know why these doors like reset every single time. Also, like I should just be able to go in there without being interrupted. I obviously haven't reset my health with whatchamacallit, the humanity either. Okay, so what happens if I run through here? Get this guy out. Okay. And if I just run over here, let's see what happens. Run, 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 run. I noticed that I missed the twinkling titanite, or the titanite lizard. Okay, so eventually they do catch up to me. I'm on the stairs. I have a chance. Oh, why didn't that hit them? What the hell? It was so weird. Okay. Yeah, so that's not working either. So basically, at this point I feel... Oh, the fire killed them. At this point I feel pretty significantly underpowered. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to do one more run through where... Well, hang on. Oh, I'm at... That's another thing. Hang on. I haven't actually, like, adequately equipped myself here either, have I? Let's try this. Drangleic leggings. Okay, and let's, rather than covetous, let's do, Ring of Giants. Wait, what? Oh, that's poise. I'm sorry. This one? Yeah, okay. And can I equip a helmet? Okay, that's not much of a helmet. That's okay. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to go to McDuff's workshop and see if I can give myself a little bit of a boost in my damage output. And see if that just helps me melt through the enemies a little bit faster. And if so, does that feel like it's sufficient enough to get through the keep currently? Because if I'm just able to melt the enemies down, then I won't have as much of an issue trying to like sustain through everything that they're doing, right? See if that strategy works. And what I'm testing here is whether or not I can come up with a viable strategy to get through the keep using my current build, which is a melee focused build. Okay, so use weapon. Oh, I have the great sword too. Let's go with the club for now. What is the great sword? It's 200. Yeah, okay, so I think the club is better. No, it's not. 180. Okay, hang on. Let me test that out. So, great sword. Damage goes up. Weight goes up. And critical goes down. I also am not going to have as much defense. 1 second. I want to just try to evaluate what the options are here. I think the club also, the fact that it was doing bludgeoning damage was helping. But the range on this thing is insane. That is very, very slow. Oh shit, yeah, it's really hard to aim too. Okay, here we go. Yeah, wow, it's really hard to aim. Okay. Well, fuck it. I like the Guts cosplay builds. Would Flamberge be a better choice? It's pretty quick. I think all things considered, it might be a better idea to use the club. This is a little bit easier to aim, it seems like. Although its primary attack is a sweep. No, it can do that too. Okay, I'm gonna try this. I've used the greatsword before, and so I want to try this and see what I can do with it. Konakun says, Megadeth, I am the King, Slayer, I'm the Antichrist, Anthrax, I'm the Law, Metallica, I'm the Table. Isn't Table a System of a Down meme? Oh wait, no, they did that weird like experimental track, didn't they? Okay. Alright, let's see. So, gonna upgrade a little bit. Let's just get to +6. Okay, and now let's see about infusing it. So, I have a few different options. Magic is not gonna help me much. Fire is not going to help me much against the Alun Knights. Boltstone probably will. The extra lightning versus the 201 is probably going to be useful. Dark could also be helpful. But I like lightning. This could let me infuse with other things. I'm going to try lightning for now, because I have a boltstone. Oh, wait, hang on. Yeah, let's do that. Yes. So, let's see what happens. Also, I wonder if I can reinforce my chest armor. Reinforce armor. Because I'm probably going to use this quite a bit. Oh, I probably need Twinkling Titanite. Don't I? Oh no, here we go. Yeah, Twinkling Titanite. Yeah, so upgrading this is pretty decent. I'm going to put... I'll just put one into it for now. And see how big of a difference that makes. And then we'll go back to the keep and see what we can do. So far, although I feel like the keep is pretty overwhelming in a lot of ways, and I'm not necessarily having as much fun with it as I have had with other areas, I feel like it's a gauntlet, yes, but it's one that is kind of pushing me to just try different things, like test my limits. It definitely, so I'll be very clear about this. It definitely does not want me to sprint through it. Like, I have not gotten the impression at all that the intention that the developers have is for me to just like skip through the level or something. That doesn't really make any sense to me. I think the intention is to pressure you and force you to come up with a new strategy. It's to put so much pressure on you that it's going to inevitably identify some weakness in your build, and that you're going to have to go and find a way to confront that weakness in order to proceed. So for me, my weakness was I wasn't doing enough damage to account for the weaknesses in my defense. And I decided to overcome that by doing that shit. And that was awesome. No, I'm not gonna die. Okay. So, of course, my positioning was wrong. But with just a little bit more tweaking, I feel like I have a much better chance. I'm watching the replay in the little preview window, and just like sending that guy flying was super satisfying. Okay, so definitely the hardest level in the game so far, but also kind of fun. Go and tell your god to just leave me the hell alone. Oh yeah, I think I remember that. Berserk is such a fucking masterpiece. Rest in peace to Miura. So sad. He left an enduring legacy, and as I'm sure you know, I know I've mentioned it before, but you know, lost my train of thought. Berserk is incredibly important to the Soul series, and my little like headcanon theory is that Miyazaki, the director of the Souls games, or most of them anyway, has been trying to make a Berserk game his whole career, just hasn't gotten the license for it. But every time he gets a little bit closer, he puts more and more things in his game that are, Berserk adjacent. Be very careful with this thing though, because it seems to be swinging me around quite a bit. I definitely feel like it's given me an additional pathway to dealing with these guys. It's just the arrows now. You gotta be aware of the range. Shit. Okay. Yeah, but I think it's pretty clear to me that the real enemy here, so to speak, is not son of a bitch, is not the any particular enemy so much as it is the level itself. The real challenge here isn't succeeding in combat with any one enemy in particular, so much as it is just being able to survive the gauntlet, right? That's a test, and I'm just consistently failing. Desire is the root of all suffering. Yes, it's a very Buddhist principle, and one that I think is a big part of this game as well. So I hope this isn't too annoying for people to watch. I really am, I'm eager to kind of get back to the more exploratory style of playthrough that we've been doing. I know it's probably boring to watch me die over and over again, but I am specifically trying to evaluate, trying to be fair about people's concerns about the game, being too punishing. And this is the area that everybody kind of comes back to as being emblematic of that unfairness. And so far, what I can say is that the aiming really does take a lot of getting used to. Is that I feel pretty exasperated by this, to be honest. I don't think it's bad or anything. I don't think the developers are stupid, but I do feel like it's just really... I don't know what I'm doing wrong, and I need to think about that before I, fully form an opinion. When I look out there and I look at all of those enemies just kind of crawling around, and I'm standing here by the door waiting, I'm not having a lot of fun. The arrows kind of hitting me from great distance. I don't think Feeble Kings, as an example, that his criticism that the archers are hidden is really accurate. They're not hidden, you can see them, they're very plain to see. But your focus is not going to be on them, and so they're going to be effectively hidden. Where are you going, buddy? Oh. Oh, so it turns out if I take my time and just look for alternate paths through the environment, that I can actually avoid combat with enemies that are gonna kick my ass. Okay. I just went around in a circle, just kind of looking to see if there's a better pathway out. I guess this is the best way to go. Okay. Hey, totally not Kavak. Hey, how's it going? Thank you for stopping by. I'm doing very well, thank you. How about you? How's your day going? Or night going at this point, I guess. Yeah, to be honest, I am... Well, part of what I'm trying to do with this particular playthrough is I've been listening to critiques of Dark Souls 2, and I've been trying to understand like why some people don't like it, because it's obviously a game that I care about quite deeply and have a lot of fun with. And I've been a little perplexed by some of the critiques that I've heard. And one of the things that I've noticed as a consistent kind of through line is that people get to Iron Keep, and that's where they're like, fuck this, I'm out, right? They find that it's either unfair, too overwhelming, or just not fun for whatever reason. And so I wanted to, as I was listening through the critiques, I kind of found myself being like, come on, it's not that bad. You guys are overreacting. Like, this is unfair. And I wanted to actually test that and see if I was right. And I am kind of having to eat my words a little bit here because it really is quite overwhelming. And for context, I've played through all the Souls games, including Dark Souls 2, multiple times. And I know what to expect. And yet I'm still really, pretty exasperated by this. I went and upgraded this club. It's not my normal playstyle. I'm trying to find a way around it. But yeah, I can definitely sympathize with the critiques. It feels like a relentless gauntlet, excuse me. And I haven't... So the question that I'm trying to ask myself basically is like, I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but skill issue question mark. Like, how much of this is a result of my own lack of creativity, of my own failure to improvise a solution to the challenge, and how much of it is literally just there's too much goddamn stuff happening in this level. And so far, I feel like I have been trying in earnest and am decently skilled. Well, that's a bad example. Decently skilled with the level, and yet am still not finding the challenge to be reasonable or satisfying so far. But it's not like I've exhausted all my options. For example, I don't have any life gems on me really that I've been using. I'm using a weapon that I have no real experience with. Just trying this out for the first time. And get it. Oh yes, okay. Also trying, like, not particularly trying any ranged options, specifically because, you know, I've heard people, some folks who have offered the critique have mentioned that they particularly struggle with a melee focused build, and so I wanted to try to see if I restricted myself to a melee playstyle, how my experience might be different from theirs, if that makes any sense. So sorry, there's a bit of a ramble. I was like completely distracted, but yeah, I'm finding it a very eye-opening experience, to be honest, but a positive one at the end of the day. Kavak says, as someone who is totally biased towards this game positively, Iron Keep is easy. Okay, well, let me know what you think. So what would you do differently in my situation? What tools do you use to kind of get through that make you feel that the game is easy? I'm genuinely curious, because what I've just come off of reading or like hearing critiques from folks like People King, who say that the level is totally unbalanced and overwhelming, too hard and stuff. But then you watch their footage, and it's broadsword only, no shield up, just rolling and poking. Like, well, okay, yeah, that would be a fucking nightmare. Like, no kidding. But I also tried sword and board, or axe and board rather, and I'm probably gonna mess this up. I'm not very good with the platforming, but I'm gonna try. And that didn't work. I'm trying to not use many ranged tools, but I might have to. Okay, there we go. That wasn't too bad. Okay. So I might what I was going to do next is I was going to go grab a bow, and I was going to start trying to kite some of them out one by one. Admittedly, that's not super fun, perhaps, but it is a viable strategy. Sometimes you just need to thin the horde a little bit, right? Totally. Oh shit. The arrows coming out and jump scaring me like that, though, is getting a little annoying. Kavak says, it's definitely a tough area, but I think the difficulty in critiques are a bit overblown. Yeah, that's been my finding as well. One of the biggest problems is people rush in, which you aren't doing, so that's good. Yeah, I'm trying to take my time. I deliberately tried to rush in a couple times to see what that would be like, and I didn't find it to be particularly viable at all. So if I'm trying to, I should probably go back to the bonfire. If I'm trying to identify like what the problems are that I'm experiencing, is that the enemies are too fast and swarm me too quickly, and so I need some sort of a multi-hit option, which I think the club does provide me with, but it's too inaccurate and isn't really, or at least I'm too inaccurate with it. It isn't really giving me opportunity to target them consistently. And if I miss, the follow-up thrust and attacks, slashing attacks, are so fast that they wind up just whittling me down. And while I can deal with any individual encounter just fine, by the end of it, I just don't have enough health to deal with Smelter Demon. Like, I haven't even tried because I just get so worn down by the time I get there. And I think I've done this enough times that I'm starting to deplete the enemy reserves. Like, some of them aren't respawning anymore, which if you're familiar with the game, I'm sure you already know this, but like if you kill enemies in a given area more than I think 12 times, they will stop respawning. Yeah, so that the club really requires me. I'm doing worse with the club, honestly, than I was with the axe, because it requires me to just be able to land that hit perfectly, and then if I don't, I get hit. So I'll probably need to go upgrade my axe a little bit and like infuse it, and then just kind of come back and deal with that. I think the club is too full commitment. Like, it's very powerful, but what happens is, like, I'll just try it right here, right? I kind of run in and just focus on this guy. Okay, I got him down in one hit, but now I'm kind of vulnerable here. You gonna follow me down here? If I had stayed there and fought there, I would have gotten in trouble. Yeah, so their attacks are hitting me at the same time because they're just too fast. I have to really get my timing right. I could just go up there, but I'm trying to figure out how to like master this encounter, so to speak. It's a weird way to phrase it, but so like these guys over here, there's quite a few. Okay, I guess going down there aggroed them, so I could bring them back to the choke point over here. We'll see what happens. I guess some people might find this frustrating, like they might prefer to just have a straightforward like progression through the space. If that one was a little slow on my part, that could have ended poorly. It was just fast enough. Okay. So let's see. That was good. Okay, so I can time that. There's another one over there. A little out of sorts. Oh, that was good. Okay. One more. They're really fast too. Wow. I think that's part of the problem too, is that as soon as you're still recovering from one of them and another one shows up. Yeah, there's another one. They just keep coming. Yeah, ah, shit. I forgot that. Yeah, in the club, if I do the follow-up heavy attack while they're still recovering from the first one, yeah, the club is just not, requires more skill, I think, than what I'm using it for. Okay. But it's doable. It's tough, but it's doable. It's kind of annoying. Okay. Maybe I'll try Smelter Demon once. Let me see. Let's see. Konakun says list of every Metallica album Gay am all Ride the Gay, Master of Gays, and Justice for Gay, the Gay album, of course by Homosexualica, Gay, Re-Gay, Saint Gay is probably my favorite, Gay Magnetic, Hardwired to Gay Destruct, as opposed to what, Gay Wired to Self-Destruct, and 72 Gay Men. Yeah, they definitely have, their coming out of the closet has been a beautiful transcendent moment in musical history. I still remember the days when they were angry at Napster for existing, and now look at how far they've come. Truly a beautiful character arc. There's your seinen fucking character development arc, Kona. That's what you want to look to. Kavak says, one of the absolutely most important things in DS2 is knowing how to aim your attacks and use your weapons optimally. Fighting a group with a broadsword, use a one-handed R2. Yeah, there's a lot of versatility in the individual weapons and the attacks, like patterns and arcs that they provide, right? So knowing how to properly switch between them and pick the one that's right for the right situation is very important. I agree. Stamina management, that's absolutely key. Yes, 100%. Also, people don't seem to realize you don't always need to dodge. For example, you can strafe like half of the pursuer's attacks. Yeah, and if you manage to manage that correctly, you can conserve stamina, which then gives you more opportunity to heal or to counterattack or whatever else. So I think getting out of that mindset from Dark Souls 1, if you're coming from Dark Souls 1 or just learning to kind of use walking as an active skill, can be very, very valuable for sure. A useful tip for this area is that you can use those archers coming off the walls the archers coming off the walls to block great arrows. Yeah, I was trying to take some cover behind one of them before, and I think I was just positioning myself incorrectly, and the great arrows were like arcing around and continuing to hit me. So I might just need to be a little bit more cautious about that. We see there's one right over there. That's working. I think because they have a little bit of a curve to their trajectory as well. Wasn't there a YouTuber who was complaining, says Konakun, that he was getting chased by the pursuer? Oh, that sounds so familiar. Yeah, I feel like people were memeing about that a while ago. Oh, Lucatil is here. Huh. Cagado de fome. Not sure what that means. Yeah, I am hesitant to do the boss right now, but I want to try and see how far we get. Especially with Lucatil here. I like summoning her because I think you need to do so for her quest progression, and that's pretty important to me anyway. Okay, this is going to be tough. Yep. Okay. Might be able to do it. Be very careful with the stamina. Oh, I forgot about that attack. What's interesting is that if you listen to the sound effect that he plays when he does that, there's like a moaning kind of sound that he plays. Sorry, a little distracted. Yeah, that sound. That's actually another asset that was used in Dark Souls 1. I forget. Oh yeah, I remember. It was used on the exploding heads that are on the way to the catacombs. I'm guessing that this was just a poor choice of weapon. Like a lightning infused thing. Oh no, I guess not. Wow, his the audio is like really distorted when he lands his attacks. I keep forgetting about that, damn. Yeah, I gotta keep my distance. Even doing anything? I don't think I'm gonna have enough health to do it. Oh, I'm still healing a little bit from the old Radiant. Oh. I remember that time. I might be able to do it. Especially with Lucatil. Yeah, we got this. I'm still gonna... my distance, though. Okay. I'm not paying attention to chat just for a second. Yeah, we got it, we got it, we got it. Yes! Okay, cool. That was fun. It was satisfying. Obviously would have been very different if I hadn't summoned. But I always summon for Lucatiel. Or summon Lucatiel for stuff. Now I feel like I should later on I should hit a bonfire aesthetic and come back and do it solo just to have the experience of fighting it one-on-one, you know? Because I want to know what other people's experiences have been. I feel like I always just like default summon for Lucatiel. So I don't think she's present in vanilla. Maybe she is. But I'll do it solo in vanilla and see how that compares. Just nice to take a moment to really appreciate all the detail in this room. I mean, this boss fight is totally optional, and it is pretty self-contained. But looking at the at what's happening over here, these individuals holding aloft the fire that's kind of pressing down on them, it's very reminiscent of the way that the what's the profane flame in Dark Souls 3 is depicted. The flames are still burning, but of course they're being held aloft by a group of people here. There's a nice kind of the motion of their sashes or whatever they are that are kind of draped down, starting from their hoods going across their chest. That the wave-like pattern of it also seems to be echoed in the like wave-like motions on the whatever the texture is along the bottom of the pedestal, which could be water. It could just be like the waves that they're raising it up from. It's just a very striking and kind of powerful, imposing image. But then also the individual segments or scales or flower petals also have a bit of beauty to them. Also, the engravings, the textures have a little bit of delicacy to them. So despite the fact that this whole area is just defined by like brute strength and weight and raw iron and stuff like that, it's still you know, there is a touch of elegance here and there that kind of comes through in some of the stonework, or not the stonework, I'm sorry, the what's the statuary? I think that's probably the right word for it. Yeah. Let me catch up on chat though. Oh, totally not Kavak says, yeah, I can't remember who though. Yeah, I think I saw it in a comment somewhere, but I can't remember who it was. I'll see if I can can find it, because now I'm really curious. Kavak also says, one thing that is difficult to see is to see through your bias. Yes, Dark Souls 2 is my favorite game outright. I have 2,923 hours in it. Wow, that's incredible. Though I don't understand how people are able to not realize their bias. It's tough. You get entrenched or just emotionally invested in something that you spent a lot of time and effort into, and it can be difficult to separate your emotional attachment to that thing, whatever it is, from what can I say, from I guess other perspectives on it, because your perspective is the one that you live, your perspective is the one that you experience and you invest in. And yeah, I think it's only natural to maybe struggle a bit to be able to step outside of that if it's your lived experience, right? Part of the reason why I'm fascinated by this is that you might be familiar with a YouTuber called Mahler or Mauler, who's done like a 10-part series. It's a 10-hour-long series on critiquing Dark Souls 2. And what I've found is that like I used to have a perspective that was quite similar to his, in that I felt like, you know, hopefully I'm paraphrasing his perspective correctly here, but I felt like video games, like all forms of art and media, essentially there is a correct way to interpret them, and that correct way is through objective analysis. There are fixed objective factors that can be logically understood, and if you distill a piece of art or media or whatever else into its like components, then you can objectively understand it and objectively determine whether it's good or bad based on those components, and that's really all there was to it. And so I thought, for example, that Horizon Zero Dawn was objectively the worst game ever made. I need to go back to the bonfire. What am I doing? And I had a 35,000 word essay that was going to become a video essay explaining why Horizon Zero Dawn was the worst game ever made, and specifically explaining to my friends who liked the game that they weren't allowed to like it because it was incorrect for them to like it because it was objectively bad. And you can't like things that are objectively bad because that's, I don't know, wrong or immoral or something. And the thing is, I was entirely sincere at the time. And I was genuinely just trying to help wake people up to the problems in this thing that was widely accepted because I was like, we all need to elevate our consciousness, man. Like, we all we all need to just do better and be invested in better things. And what I've come to realize, without getting too deep into my personal stuff, is that a lot of that was decent analysis. I did do some decent analysis. I did understand certain parts of the game's systems and mechanics quite well. But there was also a lot of my own personal perspective at where I was at the time, the other media I was consuming, the work that I was or wasn't doing in my own life was inevitably just affecting everything that I was saying. And it was impossible for me to see it until I could change my perspective and get out of my own fucking head for a little while. And then I was able to kind of come back to it and be like, okay, I still don't like this game at all, but now I can at least try to see what what I was missing that everybody else was so passionate about. And coming back to Dark Souls 2, part of what motivates me is that I hear people talking about it the way that I used to talk about games, and my perspective has changed. And so I want to see, like, okay, well, is this an instance where I might, like, separate my bias and change, quote unquote, back, or kind of, you know, wind up seeing things a bit more the way that I used to? Or is this going to confirm that the way that I look at things now is maybe more where I want to stay, something like that. So for me anyway, I couldn't do it on my own. Like, I couldn't get out of my own head. I needed shit to change in my life, and I needed to play other games and have more conversations with other people, and honestly to build things, like to just try to make any kind of art. My advice to anybody who is interested in doing critiques and analysis of anything is to make something. I don't care if it's like a little, you start to learn how to draw little cartoons on a napkin, or you know, like little stick figures on a napkin fighting, or you learn an instrument, or you learn to throw knives, or like whatever. Just like pick a skill and put like 50 hours into it. And doing that will just change the way that you see how shit is made, right? It just like gives you a different perspective. I don't know what it is, but it's just like some kind of empathy, at least for me, that like totally changed the way that I look at stuff. And even if I really, really dislike somebody's work, I can still look at it with a little bit more empathy, knowing now that I've like actually tried to build some stuff on my own, like what goes into the process. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling. I'm sorry. I'll go back to chat. Not sorry for sharing my thoughts. Just want to make sure that I stay in touch. So, let's see here. Totally Not Kavak says, like, they completely ignore it, if not lie outright to support their bias. Like I said, it's my favorite game, but holy crap, does it have some problems? Oh yeah, like the game definitely does have its flaws. And it does have some very prominent peaks and valleys in quality. It's not consistent throughout. And I think Iron Keep is definitely like a low point based on my playthrough so far. But some of the critique that I've seen of the game so far is just like, it's almost gotten wrapped up into this weird like line in the sand culture war thing where there's definitely like correlations between the worldviews, it seems, of people who dislike Dark Souls 2 and people who like Dark Souls 2. And it's just so weird to me that it's become like, this game of all fucking things has become such a like a dividing point. So I really, more than anything, I really just want to understand like what the fuck is going on there. You know what I mean? But yeah, there's a very myopic and very almost like hostile approach to experiencing the game, which I still haven't quite found a way to empathize with yet. Not everybody, to be very clear, just certain channels. Konakun says, when Melania said, I finally found my match, she wasn't talking about you, she was talking about the Mimic tier. Yeah, probably. I mean, the Mimic tier is honestly one of the most terrifying entities in the game. I think, isn't there some lore about how it was potentially a byproduct of the of an attempt to create an Elden Lord in the Eternal Cities. So it's basically a demigod. And the fact that it's copying you who do become Elden Lord is like, yeah, like canonically one of the most powerful things in the whole fucking game. Totally Not Kavak says something cool is that the fires in the arena actually go out when Smelter Demon buffs. Oh shit, I never noticed that. That's awesome. So I see that's one of the cool things about the game, right? Is that I've got maybe 500 hours in it in total, and there's still shit that I'm discovering and learning like all the time. Like there's something new that I notice in every playthrough. Like I just noticed there's a little skull up in a tree when you first enter Earthen Peak that I always thought was like a little bird's nest or something. But no, it's a little skull that's up there. Really, really cool. And I appreciate you letting me know about that too. I'll look for it the next time I do that fight. Konakun says, there are only 3 things that I can give an 11 out of 10. Berserk, Game of Thrones Seasons 1 to 4, and The House and Fata Morgana. Yeah, I will definitely check out Fata Morgana. I've written it down, and I have a few other things in my backlog, but I definitely do want to check it out. I appreciate the recommendation. Not Kovac says, I don't like Mulder. Okay, he lies too much. Yeah, plus he doesn't talk about games like there's the objective opinion, but his objective opinion. Yeah. Also, there's no objective opinion. People play what they like. Yeah, I've only made it through like about an hour total of his content, and what I've found is that I was trying to come up with an analogy to explain this to someone earlier, and listening to him is like, so far has been like, say you come home from the bar and you're drunk and you're just like really thirsty, and you say, hey man, I'm wasted, can you get me a glass of water? And your friend goes over to the bookshelf and pulls out a dictionary and says, according to Merriam-Webster, the definition of wasted is lost potential or an investment that fails to yield a proper, commensurate return. You are not an investment, you are a human being. Therefore, you factually, objectively cannot be wasted. Therefore, me giving you a glass of water would be a complete waste of my time. It's illogical and frankly offensive for you to suggest that I would do something like that when you clearly have no grasp on the situation. If you can demonstrate to me objectively, factually, that you are wasted, then by all means, I will hand you a glass of hydration. But until such time, I ask that you cease your malingering ways. It's like, motherfucker, just get me a drink. It doesn't have to be that serious. You don't have to pick the most like literal and pedantic definition of everything. And so, yeah, I disagree with some of like H Bomber guy's assessments of the game. I suppose, like, I think his language can be a little imprecise. It can be a little bit clunky, but overall, it's very clear that he loves the entire Soul series, including 1 and 2, and that he it's very easy to just try and apply a little bit of empathy to what he's saying, and you'll wind up understanding his critiques. And I don't think Mahler is interested in doing that at all. He just seems to be on a mission to just scan for every possible little semantic mistake that Harris is making, and then use that as part of some grand design to demonstrate that, like, well, this is why Dark Souls 2 fans are bad because they lie or something. I don't fucking know. It's really, really weird. I'm having like, I'm like concerned for this is one way to put it. I'm just worried. But anyway, plus he doesn't talk about games. Oh, I read that. Yeah. Have you heard of Domo 3000? Yeah, actually, Domo was part of the reason why I started getting back into Dark Souls 2. Part of it was the fucking Return to Drangleic event that happened, but I think because that was on my feed, Domo's videos started showing up in my shorts, and I was like, oh cool, this guy is kind of pointing out these things from Mahler and Matthew Matosis. Oh, I remember these guys, maybe I'll like give this a listen. And yeah, I haven't gone through all of his stuff yet, but I have really liked a lot of what I've seen so far. I think he's kind of on point, seems to be reasonable with the way he's approaching things. I'm glad he decided to move away from the AI voice. I understand, like, being self-conscious about your voice. I am self-conscious about my voice as well. But I think, it adds a little bit of extra humanity when you put your own voice forward, even if it sounds a little awkward or whatever. So I appreciated that. And I'm going to be following his work. Oh, he's kind of made it his job to debunk lies about DS2, especially lies from Mahler and Matthew Matosis. Yeah, that was another one that I listened to. Matthew Matosis's critique has been pretty fascinating as well, because that was another one of the ones that when I initially came across, I was like, oh, I'm grateful to this person. Here is somebody who genuinely understands video games objectively and correctly, and I found his video around that same time, and I was like, yeah, I want to be like this guy. Basically, I want to like understand games the way that he does, and I still respect the detail that he put into making his video, and his channel has some pretty insightful stuff. I like the video that he put out about is Tetris a perfect video game? Like, I haven't watched it in a few years, but I remember really enjoying his take there. And going back to it, I was just kind of stunned. I was like, wow, none of this makes sense. Like, none of this holds up. Like, what is happening here? Specifically, one thing that kind of motivated me to talk about stuff is his statement that the Dark Souls 2 soundtrack is worse. Like, it far pales in comparison, I think he said, to Dark Souls 1, specifically because it, I don't want to do anything that's too, like, get involved, because I'm enjoying talking, but just want to wander around and hit stuff. But he basically was like, the soundtrack to Dark Souls 2 is worse than that of 1, specifically because all of the themes are just like ripping off of, he didn't use that specific phrase, but like ripping off of Ornstein and Smo, essentially, right? Like the big bombastic fanfare from the Ornstein and Smo boss battle is like the entire Dark Souls 2 soundtrack sounds like that, and there's nothing in it that's experimental and innovative the way that the theme from Pinwheel is, like at the Seed of Giants. And I went back and listened to the soundtrack, and I was like, that is just like factually not true. I mean, I'm not even talking about, hey, if you don't like the soundtrack or whatever, that's totally fine. But like, that is just numerically, factually not true. The idea that most of the enemies and most of the bosses, I think you used the phrase vast majority, are armored knights, despite the one that I'm fighting right now, that is not true. If you just go through and literally count, like, you know, maybe it's pedantic or whatever, but if you go through and count, it is literally not true that the vast majority of enemies are armored knights. And even the characters that are like dudes in armor, as Yahtzee would say, there's still a great degree of variety in their movesets and in their equipment and stuff like that. So that's kind of what motivated me to start playing it again, is that I was seeing the discussion that was going on around it, seeing that the community was still active, and realizing that there were still some kind of pretty significant misconceptions that are still baffling to me. Like, I'm not trying to like talk shit or anything, but I honestly don't understand how somebody could come to the conclusion that the Dark Souls 2 soundtrack is just Ornstein and Smo themes. Like, if you listen to it, I'm not saying he lied or anything, I just don't, like, literally do not understand how you would come to that conclusion. So I was fascinated and wanted to look into it some more. Totally Not Kavak says there's something really cool that's something really cool about DS2 that so many people miss. Looking up can show you amazing things, like look up in Mytha's arena. Oh, Mytha, yeah, I just fought her a little while ago. Let's take a look. Appreciate the hint there. Let's see. Wait, did you search up the definition of wasted, or do you have it memorized? No. I just I just made that up. Like, I think that is probably a good definition. Like, if you look in the dictionary, it's probably going to be pretty close to that, right? But no, I didn't have that written down or anything. Oh wait, shit, wrong bonfire. But I basically what I was trying to convey is just that there is something to be said for trying to be as objective as possible. But there's I might have even left this as a comment somewhere, but like, there's a song that I would recommend listening to if you're interested in like indie folk music. I think it's just called Dissecting the Bird, and it's a song that I love this name. Wow, I love this character design. Great job. The idea is that the protagonist, or the speaker of the song, is describes this metaphor of dissecting a bird trying to find the song. And it always just struck me as such a powerful example of like how sometimes, myself included, can try to use just like a very specific rigid form of logical analysis and I guess dissection, like logical rational dissection, whatever you want to call it, to try to understand stuff like art, and ultimately you just wind up butchering the whole thing in the process. And it's not malicious, it's not like cruel necessarily. You don't want to destroy the thing, you're just desperately trying to find the song. Like, where is it? It's got to be here. Is it in the breast? Is it in the wing? Is it in the, ooh, gotta find it. And you just rip and claw and tear to try to find it, and then you realize, no, it was never there in the first place. That's not how that works. There is not a song organ per se. There's a bunch of different moving parts and complex mechanisms that combine to then give birth in a metaphorical sense to birdsong. And what I find perplexing and frustrating about critics like Mahler is that they don't seem to know how to listen to the song. They can't find the song, they can't hear the song, and they don't care, and they think that people who do spend their time trying to hear the song are, I guess, bad. Not good. For some reason I can't fathom. This is the room you mentioned, right? This is the Mytha's room. I haven't drained the poison. Oh, dude, the reflection. Oh, I never noticed that before because I was too, involved in the boss fight. That's so cool. There aren't, too many reflective surfaces in the game that are done like this. I never noticed that. Wow. And then up here as well, I mean, the mosaic or whatever is really beautifully done. And then the fire kind of hanging above the boss fight. I did notice those. I remember doing some, I did a lore video a bajillion years ago, and part of that I think involved taking some footage of these ladies pouring out the poison. I don't recall what the lore implications of them is, if that's supposed to be Mytha herself who's pouring them out. But it looks like there are little boiling vats of it that are kind of leaking out. That's really cool. Yeah, thank you for pointing out that detail. I really appreciate that. It was really good. I didn't burn the windmill. No, I didn't burn the windmill this time, just because I saw people, I think it was Feeble King, I can't recall for sure, saying that they played through the fight without burning the windmill, and then were like, oh, after I realized that you were supposed to do this, but how the fuck was I ever supposed to figure this out? If the developer intended for you to fight it this way, with the poison, that's stupid. And I was like, okay, well, how bad is it really if you fight it with the poison, right? So earlier in the stream, if you're curious to see me fumble around, I think around the 1 hour mark, I was fighting Mytha, and it took me about 20 minutes, I think, 20 minutes to half an hour to figure it out. It's totally doable. It was really frustrating at first while I was figuring out her moveset, but then once I realized there's things like when she throws her head on the ground, there's just these long periods of time where you have an opportunity to subvert, to either heal or to cure your poison or use a buff or something, right? As long as you have decently high damage output and you just keep the rhythm going, it's not that bad. But when I started it, I thought it was ridiculous, so it's one of those things where I wanted to have that experience without the help, so to speak. But yeah. Quinn says, here's a tip. If you start Fata Morgana, it will give you choices, and make sure to save before you select a choice. Oh, right, it's a VN, right? I forgot that. Before you select a choice, because if you select the wrong choice, most of the times you'll just get a bad ending. Okay, I will keep that in mind. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely I tend to play narrative games trying to get the best ending. I usually take the lawful good approach the first time through anyway, so that'll probably be the case. Thanks for the heads up. Didn't burn the windmill yet. Oh, Kavak says, has anyone told you you're really good at talking? No, not recently, but thank you. I really appreciate that. Also, I think you missed a part of one of my comments about a secret in Smelter Demon's boss arena. Oh, I'll go back up and look. I think I did miss that. Sorry. Was not, must have just missed it. But yeah, I think, well, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, that's a very nice thing of you to say. I really appreciate that. I have been trying to get better at the public speaking aspect of the streams, so I'm glad to know that it's coming across decently. Where's the best way to get to Smelter? Probably from over here. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that, really. Can I scream like... oh, wait, hang on. I gotta actually read your comment. Something cool is that the fires in the arena actually go out when Smelter Demon buffs. Also, you can re-enter the arena after resting for a secret. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I moved on after reading the first part of your comment and didn't reach the second part. Let me take a look. Just gonna look around for a second. Yeah. This game is just fucking beautiful. I don't care what anybody says. I love this game. Oh. What? Okay. This is that wonky hitbox, but okay. I didn't know he showed up here. Damn it. Ah. That was my mistake. He's probably gonna totally kick my ass too. Okay. I basically know how to fight him at this point. It's just... wait, I thought that if he gets you with the sword like that and curses you, that it's a guaranteed he gets the buff after that. Does it not happen with this one? You know, I do kind of wish... well, I know this isn't like a damn, that one is always so fast. I know this isn't like a real boss fight or whatever, but I do kind of wish we, or sorry, how can I say? There's not a health bar, and so, granted, this isn't a set up to be a boss fight in the traditional sense, and maybe that's why we don't get the music, but the Pursuer's, like, boss theme is really cool. I wish we heard it more often, and if he's going to be invading us anyway, then I kind of wish we heard it in these encounters as well. I'm not sure what the technical implications of that would be from like a design standpoint. Yeah, so I think the whoops. That when he does the sort of blue glowy attack, as an example of how the hitboxes in Dark Souls 2 can both be very good and kind of terrible sometimes. Oh shit, no. Oh, he's so low. It was so close. I better play it safe though. Okay, I can heal. Both be like very good and occasionally very wonky, because when I roll, no, oh my god. I knew it. I knew as I pressed the button. I knew that I was dead. I knew I messed up. Oh my god, I was so close. It was so stupid. But like, yeah, when I rolled into him, when he had the like his sword in the blue glowy mode, I was able to... hang on one sec. I was able to... I'm sure you saw it, right? Like, I rolled directly into it, and I didn't take damage. But then, that other time I rolled to the side, and it kind of clipped me, and I did take damage from that. So, it seems to be pretty... inconsistent or something. I overextended. Because that first time felt super satisfying. It felt like I got the timing just right and I was rewarded for it. Like that right there. That felt great, right? But when you dodge to the side and then it just barely clips your hitbox, that feels terrible. Or I don't know if it feels terrible, I guess it's subjective, but hang on one second, gotta focus slightly. It's not that it feels terrible necessarily, like, in a way that totally ruins the experience or whatever. It's just, it doesn't feel satisfying, and, like, the other way almost feels like I got, like a witch time or whatever in Bayonetta, or like a perfect parry in Sekiro. It feels, satisfying, like I engaged with the system in the correct way. It's also like, rather than backing off and trying to run away from the attack, just like I did right there, right? I'm like dodging into it, and it feels very satisfying and rewarding because I'm facing the threat and I'm engaging with it in a way that, like, my timing and prediction or whatever are correctly rewarded. Not this time. Haha. There we go. Nice. That was awesome. Thank you very much for that secret. I didn't know that that was the case, that he showed up here. And that's actually a nice buff as well. Okay. Konakun says, can you scream like Father Ariandel? Probably actually can. Because I used to do death metal vocals. Not in any official capacity. It was just something that I, enjoyed doing for fun. So I potentially could. But I'm way out of practice, and I'm sure I would wake up the neighbors, and it would probably not be advisable. So I will spare you for now. But I'll consider doing it for for an incentive on the stream at some point or something like that. I actually, for a school project at one point, I recreated the scream from Bloodborne that the cleric beast does, which, and I don't want to. So like I'm kind of a nerd for audio related things, but it turns out that the scream that the cleric beast does is the same scream as the wyvern in Witcher 3 does, because they both use the same like sample library for that sound, which is interesting. But I think that the new meme, if you've seen, not the meme, what would you call it, the it has come to light recently that the sample used for Orphan of Kos's scream in Bloodborne is also used for like the cartoony yell sound of a character in Pizza Tower. And I think it's something that Germa realized on stream at one point. Germa985, the streamer. And it's really, really funny. But also, like, if you go into the Orphan of Kos's boss fight and really listen to the sound in context, it's mixed in with other things, so it's not like they just dragged it and dropped it out of the library into the game. And I think it is still appropriate. It has a very kind of harrowing, unnerving, frenetic energy to it that I think is perfect for that boss fight. So I wouldn't change the Orphan of Kos's voice at all, just to be very clear. But it is kind of funny to hear it in a different context, and let's see here. I'm probably going to wrap up the stream pretty soon. It's been about 3.5 hours. I got to go do some life stuff. But I really appreciate all of the comments and all the engagement and the positive feedback. I'm going to read the comments that we've gotten so far, just to make sure that I wrap everything up. And then I'll head out in a few minutes after that. Let's see. Oh, Totally Nakavak says, I'll check out that song. What kind of music do you like? Got any favorite artists / bands? I like Will Wood, Phil Collins. Phil Collins is great, yeah. Green Day, yep. And Tally Hall, plus some of Rob Cantor's solo work. I don't know all of those names, I admit, but I'm definitely interested to check them out. So thank you for sharing that. Green Day Dookie, that was one of the first albums that I ever got, and it was like an album that I played endlessly on repeat. Just whatever I was doing in my life at the time, whether it was like building Legos or doing homework or whatever else, like cleaning the house, whenever I just had like downtime in my house, I would play that album. And yeah, it just has a special place in my heart. Still just probably my favorite out of their catalog. Of course, American Idiot is probably more like their seminal album, the one that had the most cultural impact or whatever. But Dookie, to me, there's just like this consistent through line of self-deprecation and I don't know, honesty about being kind of a teenage dirtbag or whatever. That felt anyway very genuine to me at the time, and very like I had an emotional connection with it that was beneficial to me. And it's just a lot of fun too. Like there's so much like fun energy in a lot of those tracks. As for me, these days I mostly listen to video game soundtracks, and my favorites are like the Drakengard and Nier series have some great music. Obviously the Souls games, I enjoy their music. Undertale, I've been like trying to learn to play some songs on guitar, and I've been playing songs from Undertale and Sonic the Hedgehog, specifically Sonic Mania. That soundtrack is amazing. and some anime stuff as well here and there. I really like Creepy Nuts. They did the OP for Don Da Don and Mashal. And my favorite band's probably Maximum the Hormone, who you might know from doing some of the themes from Death Note, among other things. They also did the theme from Resurrection of F, the Dragon Ball movie. So, yeah. What else? I have to think. I haven't actually spent enough time in a while just like listening to music, and I really should kind of get back into it. My brain is usually very like wired, and I want to do a bunch of different things at once that require me to, or how can I phrase it? Just like sitting still and actually listening to music and giving it the attention it deserves, and just like getting into the mood, the atmosphere of it, right, is what I feel like I should do. And then I just get too antsy and don't wind up doing it as much as I should. But yeah, I'm definitely down for recommendations. Let me think. What was I listening to recently? I'll give it some more thought, and see if I can come up with things. I'm really bad at coming up with like favorites on the spot for whatever reason. You can also just walk to the right to avoid the grab. Grabs always have been janky. Oh yeah, that's something the urge to parry or dodge is just so deeply ingrained that it's like a reflex at this point. But thank you. I'll try that next time he shows up. Something about connecting two models together makes it look weird compared to getting clipped by an attack. That is true. Yeah. I think there's been some amazing work by the community at identifying some of the problems with the hitboxes and stuff like that. I just don't have the technical aptitude, I guess, to really break that down on a mathematical level or anything. But it is really cool to see the hitboxes visualized and colliding with one another, and see the origins of the issue, so to speak. Quinn says I only listen to metal, anime, and game soundtracks. Yeah, that's a lot of what my focus is these days as well. And also I have an app called Shazam on my phone, which I think probably most people know about at this point, right? But I will just kind of pull it out whenever I hear a song that I like, and keep, what's it called? I got distracted because I'm trying to look on my phone to see if I have any things I've listened to recently. Army of Mushrooms by Infected Mushroom is an album that I listened to recently that I really liked. Year Zero by Nine Inch Nails, Mezzanine by Massive Attack, Toxicity, System of a Down, and and A Little Bit of Mambo by Lou Bega was in there too. No comment as to why that's there, but you might enjoy it. So I think that's going to be it for me for this evening. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I know there was a lot of kind of sitting around and like rambling about various topics as opposed to just constant exploring the world, as well as getting fixated a little bit on Iron Keep there. But I personally found it valuable. I think I can empathize a bit better now with the experiences of folks who have had frustrations with this level. Doesn't necessarily ruin my impression of the game at all, but it is very useful to have spent the time to just kind of focused on that for a couple hours. The next one, of course, is going to be Amana. If you ask most people who dislike Dark Souls 2 what are their least favorite parts of the game, they'll probably say, at least in terms of levels, Amana and Iron Keep. And so I'm eager to get there, but of course, it's going to take our time going through the other two great souls, and taking our time through Drangleic Castle as well. There's no rush to any of this. When we do get to Amana, it'll probably be something similar, where I'll set aside the stream mostly for that and just kind of focus on the enemy placement and difficulty and see what tools I have to try to overcome them. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Next stream is going to be this Sunday at 2 p.m. EST, as usual. We're going to be working our way through the not multiversal, Jesus. We're not getting to that yet. Going to be working our way through the, hopefully, final portion of the Brutal Honesty Kakazu versus Pain video. I have started a discussion about multiversal Naruto in Discord, and it's something that I want to talk about eventually, but we gotta finish this one first, because otherwise it'll never end. And then next week I'll be just picking up from where I left off here for Dark Souls 2. Thank you, Konakun, for showing up and checking in. I really appreciate it. Stay strong and good luck with everything that you're going through. Please stay connected. You know, if you're available on Sunday to just stop by even for like 10 seconds to say hello, I'd really appreciate that. And Kavak as well, it's really great to have you stop by. Hope everything's going well for you, and I really appreciate both the like positive feedback as well as the secrets and the new discoveries in Dark Souls 2. Hope you'll stop by again. But regardless, have a great night, and I'll talk to you later.